Yes.
Okay, everybody, can I have your attention? Okay, I want to welcome everybody to our meeting. It's good to have everybody here. And it is April 24th. It's about 2:30. We're at the Montgomery County Board of Elections in Gaithersburg, Maryland. We have a quorum. All 7 of our members are here. And again, welcome everybody. Before we proceed with our business, I have the pleasure of awarding 4 certificates to our dedicated employees who have served us from 10 years up to 15 years. So what I'm going to do is let me go up here and call each individual up and just have them say hello and what section they work in. And it's an honor to do this in front of such a big turnout.
Yeah, that's nice.
Very nice. Okay, first I want to call Stella Gonda. Stella, come on up.
Absentee department.
Huh?
The absentee department.
Absentee ballots? And you've been here 10 years?
Since 2000, actually.
Oh, okay. Yes. We don't have one for 17? Well, from Montgomery County, this is an award from Montgomery County, Maryland, awarding this certificate to B. Stella Gonda for 10 years of excellent service. And your years of public service to the citizens of Montgomery County are greatly appreciated, and it's signed by our county executive, Isaiah Leggett. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
We're going to take a picture later, so wait up here. Okay. And our next honoree is Jerry Quarshi. Jerry, come on up. And what section do you work in?
Information technology.
Okay, and how long have you been here?
10 years.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And again, Montgomery County, Maryland awards this certificate to Jerry Quarshi for 10 years of service. Your years of public service to the citizens of Montgomery County are greatly appreciated. And it's signed by Isaiah Leggett, our county executive. Congratulations. Okay. Our third honoree, Tia Prince. Tia, how are you? And what section do you work in?
Registration.
And how long have you been here?
10.
Well, thank you. And again, Montgomery County, Maryland awards this certificate to Tia L. Prince for 10 years of service. Your years of public service to the citizens of Montgomery County are greatly appreciated. And it's signed by Isaiah Leggett, our county executive. Congratulations. And this is our last but not least honoree, our election director, Margaret Jurgensen, who's completed 15 years of service. And Margaret is our election director. She runs the whole show.
Or it runs me.
Or it runs her. Just to read, it's Montgomery County, Maryland awards this certificate to Margaret A. Jurgensen for 15 years of service. Your years of public service to the citizens of Montgomery County are greatly appreciated. Signed by Isaiah Leggett. And I told Ike that when you get to 30 years, we're going to have a much bigger party. Let's take a picture with the board. Let's get the board and the...
We may not have room. Why don't you
do it with
us?
them?
You do it, Jim.
Yeah, you go ahead.
I'll be okay.
My favorite.
Smile. Jerry. Let's try one more time. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Okay, first we're going to go to the approval of the minutes from March 20th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I wasn't here. I move the minutes be approved as amended, as we received the amendments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the minutes as mentioned, say aye.
Aye.
No one opposed? Approved. Okay, because we have so many people here interested in one of our topics today, we're going to have public comment from people that want to talk. We'd like to keep the comments 3 minutes, 4 minutes, but, just 3 minutes if we can. But if you're in the middle of a sentence, we're not going to drop the anchor on you. And then after that, we're going to go into our discussion about the Judicial Watch letter and a presentation by our staff as to what they're doing, what they have done, and will be doing to deal with the issues raised by Judicial Watch. So first, we have a chair for our speakers.
Yes.
Lisa, do we have people that have signed up to speak?
Yes, we have several who would
Okay.
like to address the board.
Well, Dick Jergany was, I think, here
Yes,
first.
he is
Dick-
first actually on the list.
Dick Jergany is our new county chairman of the Republican Party. Dick, welcome, and have a seat with us. Good to have you. And Dick has handed out his statement. But welcome, Dick.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Thank you for having me. My name is Dick Jergany, and as Jim says, I am the chairman of the Montgomery County Republican Central Committee. I was very concerned when I saw the letter from Judicial Watch about the number of registered voters that we have, which apparently exceeds the number of eligible voters. I'm not sure whether those numbers are accurate or not, but I guess my first question was, when I saw that list, was why is Montgomery County the only county in Maryland that has this problem when all of the counties are operating under the same state law? So I think that needs to be looked at as to what the difference is among how things are being done. Maybe we should call Prince George's and Frederick County and ask them what they're doing. That got me started. I purchased a diskette back in February of this year, 2017. It has 672,000 registered voters. So I went through and looked at how many voters had not voted in the last, in all the time that was covered on that diskette, which went back to February of 2008. There were a total of 109,000 voters that had never voted, 102,949 who had never voted in any election, including primary or general elections, during that entire time frame. So that, I mean, that was alarming to me, that they were still on the records as registered voters, and this was an active list. This did not include the inactive list. Then I got to thinking, well, maybe those voters weren't registered long enough to vote. So I went back and counted. I could only take a sample of 100, and half of those voters had registered after 2018 or 2008, which left the other half, which was about 50,000 voters that have been on the roll since 2008 and have not voted in a single election. That includes 11 elections, both primary and general, and 5 general elections. Now, in order to get sample ballots mailed, they're mailed at the nonprofit rate. And in order to get that rate and the barcode, they have to go through the national change of address. So every time one of those elections was held, those records went through the national change of address. You get the data of who's moved, who's deceased, and you don't get who's deceased. You just get who's moved. So there was an opportunity at least 11 times to clean that list, and that apparently was not done. So we end up with something like 50,000 pieces of sample mail being mailed out each time there's an election at about 20 cents, which is the nonprofit rate. That's about $100,000 of taxpayer money that was wasted. I hear a lot about we can't afford to do national change of address or participate in the county cross or the state cross election process. That money could have gone for that if we had done our job. So basically, I feel like it's time to drain the swamp. I think that there are some people who are not doing their job, and I would suggest that maybe our election director might be asked to step down to a lack of confidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Lisa?
All right, so next we have Sarah Brannon.
Okay. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you very much for having me here today.
Thanks for coming.
I am Sarah Brannon. I'm an attorney with Project Vote, and I'm here to speak in response to the Judicial Watch letter that you guys received on April 11th. Project Vote is a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with a mission to ensure that the electorate respects the diversity of our country. We have a particular expertise in issues related to voter registration and list maintenance, which is why I'm speaking here today. We want to express some concerns about some misstatements and omissions that were in the Judicial Watch letter. We did send a response letter to the State Board of Elections along with the organization DEMOS. I see it was out front today. So I will refer you to that. There's a little bit more detail in that letter, but I'm going to go through a few of the highlights today, try to be very succinct. Contrary to the tenor of Judicial Watch's letter, the purpose of the NBRA is not to remove voters from the rolls. In fact, the very first purpose that is enunciated in the statutory language is that the goal of the statute is to increase the number of eligible citizens who are registered to vote. List maintenance, of course, is very important. Nobody's here to argue that. And having up-to-date and complete voter rolls reflecting all eligible voters is a beneficial outcome, and we do not oppose any reasonable efforts to remove ineligible voters from the rolls. But those efforts must be carried out in accordance with the NBRA. Hastily crafted additional removal programs based on unsupported allegations without regard to the state's existing procedures and the NBRA are likely to lead to violations of the NBRA and, more importantly, to disenfranchise eligible and properly registered voters. The NBRA has a narrow and simple affirmative requirement for list maintenance. It only requires jurisdictions to conduct reasonable efforts pursuant to a general program of list maintenance, and only requires these reasonable efforts with respect to voters who have died or have moved. It gives us an example of a good list maintenance program to be one that is based on the Postal Service change of address information. More of the specific provisions in the NBRA limit the circumstances under which states and jurisdictions can remove individuals from the voter rolls. This is in order to reduce the chance that eligible citizens will be removed accidentally. The states may not remove voters for change of address until the voter confirms that they have moved or until a sufficient warning notice has been sent and 2 general elections have elapsed following the statutory required notice, which is the notice letter that has to be sent out. These strict requirements were enacted in the NBRA to effectuate Congress's concern that removal programs can be abused. Judicial Watch incorrectly claims that merely having more voters on the rolls than voting age citizens in the jurisdiction is strong evidence that the county is not maintaining a reasonable list maintenance program. Given the NBRA's restrictions on the state's ability to immediately remove voters they suspect have moved from the rolls, there are often voters on a voter registration list who have moved but are still in the process of being removed. It is therefore unsurprising that you would find that there are more names on a voter registration rolls in a jurisdiction than the voting age citizens, especially in a place like Montgomery County where there's a lot of movement. People move. Judicial's assertion that Montgomery County is failing to comply with the NBRA merely because the county allegedly has more registered voters than adult citizens is simply wrong. The information Judicial Watch points to is not evidence of a lack of NBRA compliance, and as you'll note, the letter does not point to any actual deficiency with list maintenance procedures in Montgomery County. Judicial Watch also points to some things that have been found to be inconsistent and in violation of the NBRA. It points to a settlement agreement that executed in Ohio as an example of appropriate list maintenance, but fails to acknowledge that some of the activities agreed to in that settlement agreement have recently been held to violate the NBRA by the Sixth Circuit of the United States. The practice basically that was held to be in violation of the NBRA was a practice of targeting registered voters merely because they did not vote to begin the process of list maintenance removal. There were thousands of eligible voters who would have otherwise been disenfranchised, who were able to cast ballots in the recent general election because of the Sixth Circuit's decision. We urge Montgomery County Board to reject Judicial Watch's attempt to hastily remove voters from the rolls and to take a careful and reasoned approach to list maintenance as is envisioned by the NBRA and ensuring to protect eligible Maryland citizens' right to vote. Thank you very much for your time today, and I again refer you to our letter for more details.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lewis Porter.
Welcome, Lewis. Come on up.
Good afternoon. I'm Lewis Porter, and I'm the leader of Maryland 2020 Watch. Primary goal is voting concerns here in the state of Maryland. We're a statewide concern. And I think that I just want to go on record and say I fully support Tom Hinton for Judicial Watch and pointing out the hypocrisy in the number of voters, as he's indicated, versus eligible voters are in the county. And I think that I would wish that you would fully look into it. We're about to come out with a report from Maryland 2020 that has an array of these bogus systems where you cannot remove dead people from the list, give them 2 years. You have a coroner that reports the certificate of death could easily be sent to any board of elections to indicate and immediately remove that person. The disenfranchisement is not from the individual that can't stay on the list. It's from the citizen that's already on the list that is being disenfranchised from his vote by allowing illegal voters, illegal aliens that are in the country that are voting, and dead people that are on the list that are still on the list. That's the disenfranchisement. The disenfranchisement is to the citizen of this county and a citizen of the state and a citizen of the country. So bear in mind, we're going after a thorough investigation. We started with the primary that happened in Baltimore City. We will be concluding that soon. I've put out reports for the governor, sent letters to him to have the Attorney General in the state investigate into this process of all of these things, voting through where you go on, what is it, at the motor voter? NBA, yeah, and then not removing people from the list, and then saying, well, that was in the past, we've done things and we've cleaned up the problem, it's no longer. But the problem has remained. I was here just a few years ago with Kathy Kelleher, and we spoke about the need to remove deceased people from the list right here to this very board, and obviously nothing is being done about it. So I please implore you to get on board and recognize that we're coming after making sure that this information is generally known to the entire state, and we will be doing that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lewis.
Thank you. Next, I think, I apologize, I don't understand the writing too well. Ann Mathers, is that right?
Is something close to Ann Mathers?
There's someone
Owen?
named Ann?
Owen Mathers?
First 6 digits of the phone number, maybe.
Okay, first 6 digits of the phone number, 301-787.
Okay.
We'll move on.
It's 2021.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Is that me, Dan McHugh?
Oh, Dan.
Dan?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry.
All right, Dan.
What is this?
Welcome, Dan.
Sorry, Dan.
Dan, you gotta
I'm
put your
sorry.
name next to me. I'm a product of Montgomery County Public Schools. They just pass you. They don't care about penmanship. Come on. Anyway,
Hey, Dan. How are you?
I want to
Welcome.
thank the board for allowing me to speak. I'm the vice president of the Montgomery County Young Republicans, and like some of the people have testified already, I'm very concerned about the Judicial Watch letter. I think that we are suffering from a hangover from the O'Malley administration. A lot of reckless laws were passed while Martin O'Malley was governor. Things like giving illegal immigrants driver's licenses, which, obviously gave the ability illegal immigrants to the ability to vote. And so, and interesting enough, I called the Maryland Board of Elections today, and I spoke to a woman whose name I can't remember. She told me that, and I didn't know this, that 16-year-olds are allowed to register to vote in the state of Maryland, and they can't vote until they're 18. And I said, that's got to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So you're 16 years old, you register to vote, and you're inactive on the voter rolls for 2 years before you can even vote. How stupid is that? And I brought up Tacoma Park, the fact that Tacoma Park already allows 16-year-olds and illegal immigrants to vote in city elections. Well, she told me that, Tacoma Park, because of their different rules than everybody else, has their own voter rolls from the rest of the county, which I found to be interesting. Like I said, I think that many of these reckless, and obviously this board has nothing to do with those laws being passed, but obviously these laws need to be looked into. It was very obvious that when you allow 16-year-olds to register to vote, and you allow illegal immigrants to register to vote because they gave them driver's licenses, that these type of problems wouldn't occur in the future. Very predictable, and obviously something should be done about it. And I hope this board, to the best of their ability, and I have the confidence they will look into this matter and get the voter rolls cleaned up in this state, and more specifically our county. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Then we have John O'Malley.
Welcome, John.
Hi. I am a third-generation resident of Montgomery County, grew up in Montgomery County, went to school in Montgomery County. Because I'm a third-generation resident of Montgomery County, I know that there is a long history of political corruption in Montgomery County and in the state of Maryland. The state of Maryland has a reputation of being one of the most corrupt states in the Union. In my lifetime alone, we had 2 governors who either went to jail or would have gone to jail. Now, in the previous election, we had areas in Maryland where in 25% of the voting districts, they had more than 100% turnout, and this was in a primary. Now, in a general election, you get around 50% turnout. In a primary, you get about 30%. So how do you get from 30% to more than 100%? It's from ballot box stuffing. Ballot box stuffing is real. In addition to that, another way that they rig the vote is through gerrymandering. Right here in Montgomery County, the people who engaged in gerrymandering have made it impossible for Democrats to lose. If the voting districts in Montgomery County had been drawn by honest people, there would be 1 or 2 Republicans on the county council from the north and west part of the county. So this is a multi-part campaign to subvert the electoral process in the state of Maryland. One of the reasons that you're only supposed to have voting on one day is it makes ballot box stuffing more difficult. That is why they set up the early voting centers, which are called the early ballot box stuffing centers, because now they have about a week to stuff the ballot boxes. This is all coordinated with forcing Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration employees to become accessories to the crime of illegal voting. By doing this, if they get a few percentage points from the gerrymandering, a few percentage points from the early ballot box stuffing centers, which if you read the Code of Maryland Regulations, section 33-17-02, subparagraph B, they require the county boards of elections to locate the early ballot box stuffing centers in the Democratic parts of the county, because they want the early ballot box stuffing centers to be as close to the Democratic voters as possible and as far away from the Republican voters as is possible. This is a part of their campaign to suppress the vote of the minority party, which is, in this case, it's the Republican Party. So they get a few percentage points from all of these various criminal activities, and this is how they are literally stealing elections right in front of everybody over and over and over again. So this Judicial Watch thing should not be considered separate. This Judicial Watch thing is a part of a well-coordinated statewide campaign to steal one election after another. Why? Half the people don't even vote because they realize that these elections are rigged in advance by the powers that be. So every voter who makes a decision to not vote is in effect casting a vote of no confidence in these elections that you are supposed to administer. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Next we have Ms. Payne.
Welcome.
Hi.
How you doing?
I only just found out about this meeting, so I have no prepared statement. But I do have some information that might be helpful to the board.
Good.
I've been a community activist, now I think it's more popular to say community organizer, for a lot of years in this county. I've lived here since the mid-'80s. And this voter information, or this issue, has been very near and dear to me. One of the speakers talked about Tacoma Park allowing non-citizens, doesn't matter what status, illegal or legal, just non-citizens to vote. That's one of 6 jurisdictions in the state that allows that to happen, and they're all in Montgomery County. The other thing is, he talked about 16-year-olds registering to vote. Now, that was a bill that was passed in the legislature about 5 or 6 years ago and would not have been able to be passed. It was introduced by the Democrats and pushed through had the Republicans not agreed to it. And so if you want to lay some blame on that issue, there's blame to go around on both sides. 16-year-olds do register to vote. They aren't supposed to vote until they're 18, but we don't know what goes on in the high schools and when the voter forms are distributed. I personally don't think 16-year-olds should be registering to vote. I don't mind if you're 17 and you're going to be 18 by election time, but I don't think that 16-year-olds should be registering to vote. The second thing is, I was part of an organization, and I have all the data on my laptop, if this will be helpful. I was part of an organization that sent a letter to every clerk of the court in the state of Maryland, including Baltimore City, and we asked the clerks of the court, what do they do when they send out a summons for jury duty and someone comes to them and says, I can't serve on the jury because I'm a non-citizen. Now, they get that information from 2 places, the Motor Vehicle Administration and from the voter rolls. So when a person comes and says, I'm sorry, I can't comply with the summons because I'm a non-citizen, what happens to that information? Do we forward it to the Board of Elections? Do we forward that to the motor vehicle? No. There is no legal requirement in the state of Maryland for them to do that, the clerks of the court, so it gets deep sixed. We sent out an information, kind of a FOIA request, to everyone every clerk of the court in the state. And the only person who responded was the clerk in Frederick County, because she was new. She responded and gave us the data. There had indeed been many, many people who had contacted her and said, I can't serve on the jury because I'm a non-citizen. We then cross-referenced that against the voter rolls. Not only had a substantial portion of them indeed registered, they had indeed voted. So when you talk about disenfranchising an American citizen, it's a very real thing. And when you're talking about state elections, which the state legislature decides to give you a gas tax and a rain tax and everything else, you've got 2,000, 3,000 votes can swing an election. So I had all that data. I then worked with a state legislator, and we tried to get it in through a committee to just require the clerks of the court to notify the Board of Elections and the Motor Vehicle Administration to update their rolls and use this vital information that had come legally to them. And the person who was in charge of the committee again a Democrat, said that would be akin to voter intimidation. It is not akin to voter intimidation. In fact, if you are in this country and you have no legal status, even if you have a green card, and you register to vote, it is an immediately deportable crime under federal law because you are impersonating an American citizen. And if you indeed do vote, you turn this information over to the Attorney General. At the time we did, Doug Gansler, and he didn't want to do anything about it.
Shocker.
He didn't want to do anything about it. Either did Joe Valario on Judiciary, either did Frosch, who is now our Attorney General, on his committee in the Senate. Nobody wanted to do anything about this. Is this a real problem? Yes, it is. For instance, I had gotten for 5 years a voter registration coming to my house and a sample ballot from someone named Maria Hernandez that I don't know anything about. Just came under my address, and every time I voted, I wondered if, someone else had already voted for me. So I brought that to the board, and nothing was done. Finally, eventually, I made a ruckus about it, and they did do something. My own daughter moved to North Dakota, and I told the Board of Elections, you have to take Lauren Payne off the rolls because she no longer lives here. She's a citizen of North Dakota, which, by the way, has same-day registration. So they didn't take her off. For 2 election cycles, we were getting sample ballots addressed to my daughter. So I'm telling you, it's a real problem. Now, how do you go about solving it? Yes, gerrymandering is a problem, but that's not a problem here. The problem here is that you have groups that are registering people to vote. There are people who park themselves outside of the Motor Vehicle Administration, park themselves outside of Giant Food. I have witnessed this, where they're members of certain groups, and the person will. I actually said to one of the people, "Are you a citizen?" And they said, "I'm not sure." And the person registering them said, "Don't worry about it. Just sign up and register to vote. Let the Board of Elections worry about if you're a citizen or not." Then what came through is online registration. How in the world do you prove any of this? There is such a bad problem, and I don't think it's just Montgomery County. I think it's in the entire state. And I think that there has been a lack of leadership, not just with Ike Leggett, which I blame a lot for, but there is a lack of leadership on a state level. And I believe that O'Malley had some culpability in this, but Larry Hogan, who we have nicknamed us independents, Larry the Rhino, he has a lot of problems too, and he has done nothing to address this issue, although groups like mine that are just citizen grassroots groups have come forward and begged the governor's office to look into this, and he has done nothing. So his hands aren't clean either. But this business about people who are not citizens registering to vote and voting should be dealt with. And I have a lot of data because I've been at this a long time. I went with Bill Buchanan of Answer to Tacoma Park. We asked for their voter rolls so we could cross-reference them against the county and the state. And they said, unless you are a candidate, we're not going to give them to you. So I tried to get a candidate who is now on the council, who we were friends in college together, but he wouldn't get them for me.
Ms. Payne, I have to
Sorry.
cut you off.
Sorry, that's
Politely.
okay. I'm just here to help, and
Thank
but
you.
it's a real problem, and it needs to be really addressed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Liz Lawrence.
Hello, Liz.
I saw this meeting being called, I just saw it today, and I still have some of the effects of my grandmother who passed away. She has an ID from Florida. It has her address, and she could use this as a voter card. Why we don't have this available for everyone who does not have a license or a legal license, or to show some form of address. I mean, when you go to vote, and I do it purposely, I bring out a license or my address. Oh, we don't want to see that, which is confusing. We're voting, why not check the rolls? And Anyway, if you go to Best Buy and return something, they ask you for your driver's license. They want an ID. So it would be rather simple to me to do the same thing for not only just Montgomery County, but statewide, countrywide, that we have some kind of ID, whether it's a legal driver's license or a card that says this is not a driver's license, but this is an ID. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. David Wilson, did you want to address?
I wrote down maybe,
Maybe.
just in case everybody said everything that I needed to add.
Okay.
Hi,
How you doing?
I'm David Wilson, and I'm actually a candidate 2018 for public office in Legislative District 15. Now, the first time I voted in Montgomery County, I'm not a long-time resident of Maryland, but it is my home now. It's going to be my home for a long time. The first time I voted, I did the same thing. I had my driver's license and my voter registration card, and the guy smirked, put his hand on it, slid it across the table, and said, "We don't use those here." I said, "Well, how do you know who I am?" He said, "Well, if you want me to check, I'll check." Okay. Maybe that's part of the reason why I'm running for office, because, anyway. It's very easy to be extremely angry about this type of stuff. And underneath what I hope is a calm demeanor, I'm pissed. I served 2 tours in Iraq. My second tour was 2004 and 2005. I missed the birth of my child. Now, he was there when I got back. But if you remember, during that time, January of 2005, they had their first election. You may remember the pictures of purple fingers. The reason they did that is because they wanted to ensure that those votes were counted and valid, and that process was appropriate, and that people had confidence in that. And I'll be doggone if I'm going to come back to my country and have doubts of whether this process is a valid and appropriate process. I have to have confidence. You have to have confidence. And my children and my 2 granddaughters need to have confidence that their votes count in a process that is not rife with... Anyway, so, look, I'm naive enough to believe that we have all of the rules and regulations in place to prevent this type of thing from happening. I am. But I'm also experienced enough to understand that people can mess it up. Some do it accidentally, and some do it on purpose. Well, I'll guarantee you this. Everything within me, as I run for office and I serve the public, will ensure that we have a valid voting process, and those who choose to ignore the regulations and the laws will get prosecuted to the fullest extent possible. I thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Damon Effingham, did you want to address the board? Yes.
My name is Damon Effingham. This is an awkwardly set chair. I'm the Legal and Policy Director for Common Cause in Maryland. We're based in Annapolis, but we've been around since the 1970s. Represent thousands of Marylanders on issues of voter access, voting rights, gerrymandering, and other democratic access issues. We're here today in support with Project Vote and DEMOS as well to support what they had to say earlier, so I won't kind of backtrack over that. I'll just remind everyone that, over the past 20 years, there have been myriad studies into the abilities into looking for evidence of the type of voter fraud that many people have been concerned about. And these studies have not just come from nonprofit organizations like Common Cause. They've come from the George W. Bush administration. They've come from law schools across the country. They've come from various public institutions that have a good deal of faith on both sides of the aisle. And in all of these studies, virtually nothing of any kind has been found of the degree that people are fearing in this room today. And I think that that's something that we need to consider and think about as we move forward. And it's very easy to get angry when you're being told that there's definitely this happening and I can show you, but I don't ever show you. Or when you have a president who unfortunately claims that there are millions of illegal votes cast in an election when he has no evidence to back that up. It's important for us to understand both the way that this process works and work together with the people who are sitting in this room, both in the outer circle and the inner circle, that they want this process to move forward in a way that is fair to everyone. And then just one last comment. I'll say that earlier a gentleman from the Republican Central Committee had made a comment that removing these voters from the rolls will be a way to drain the swamp. I would argue that many of the people, if you are interested in draining the swamp, many of the people who do vote, who are independents, who are not party line voters, are the ones who vote occasionally. They're not at every single election. So if you're wanting to have a candidate, let's say, who has the backing of people who aren't typical partisans, this urging for this unnecessary removal of the rolls is going to be removing non-partisan voters that may agree with you. Just be careful what you wish for. That's all I'd say. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Sharon Cohen.
Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here today. I'm Sharon Cohen, and I am a lifelong individual here in Montgomery County. I'm a member of the Republican Central Committee from Legislative District 15. I want to associate my comments with our chairman, Dick Jurgeny. But I also serve as one of 2 Republicans on the County Council's committee that provides advice and counsel to them on the Public Election Fund. And so something that hasn't been touched upon here today is the fact that we have, based on the success of the term limit ballot initiative last November, 5 open seats. Of course, the county executive and the other 4 in the county council. So 2018 is really a pivotal election for our county. And making sure that those voter rolls are accurate and appropriate are no more needed now than ever for this coming election. And as you know, with the Public Election Fund, those candidates that choose to run will get your tax dollars and mine if they qualify and if they max. And the county council is likely to have about $11 million in the pot for that fund. So we're not talking about an inconsequential amount of money. And what I understand from the way this will work, if there's any challenges to how the funds were doled out, in other words, maybe some of the funds weren't appropriate, that won't be done until after the election. So even more reason to make sure the people who are voting are accurately and appropriately able to vote. Now, we've heard about, people going off the rolls and they should or shouldn't go off the rolls, and this concept or worry about disenfranchisement. But there's something called a provisional ballot. Maryland law, as you all know, allows for anybody basically to show up on election day or during early voting, and if they're not on the rolls, they're missing for some reason, they can vote with a provisional ballot. So nobody's losing the opportunity to cast a ballot on election day. With provisional ballots, if in fact the grand total of them may shift the election results, as you know, then they get counted. If they're immaterial to shifting the election, they don't get counted. But nobody's prevented from casting the ballot on that day. So I would just I made a hair shaking of heads, but I just would caution us that there are other opportunities here, but particularly with the term limit initiative that passed and so many open seats, we really need to make sure that the voter rolls are appropriate. And I would ask, the chairman and other members of your committee and the staff to really look at what is in the statute today. Is there something that needs to be changed from a statutory standpoint? I don't know, but would like to know. Is there something in the regulations or the rules that are being used, the processes that other people have spoke to today, that's not working or could work better and more efficiently. I bet you there's some changes that could be made that make it more efficient and get people off the rolls that should be off the rolls. We're not talking about taking people off the rolls who are citizens who have the right to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you. Mr. President, I wish to clarify that every provisional ballot is examined and tabulated if it is allowed to be tabulated.
Okay.
And can you add every absentee ballot the
Every
same?
absentee ballot.
It doesn't depend on what the other results are.
That's right.
Could I make a comment on that?
Well, we're going to move forward.
We can't open it up.
We can't open it up.
Mr.
Yeah.
President, as of now, we don't have anyone else who's actually addressed that they would like to speak to the board.
Okay. So I think we're going to because of the interest in this topic, we're going to move the agenda so that we're going to have a presentation from staff. But let me just make a few remarks first. First, I would say, in clear and as loud as voice as I can, that voter fraud is totally unacceptable. And this board has zero tolerance for any voter fraud. Again, zero tolerance for voter fraud. We take this issue very serious that Judicial Watch has raised, and working with the state. As you've heard, the state regulations and rules govern this whole area of registration and removal of voters. This board takes that task very serious. I think the presentation will reveal that approximately 76,000 voters have been removed from the rolls since this board sitting here today was sworn in June of 2015. So this board has overseen the removal of about 76,000 voters, and we will continue to follow the rules and regulations of the state and remove every ineligible voter that the law and the rules provide. And that is, I think, the main issue, what we are bound by, and Jessica White of our staff is going to shed some light on the rules and regulations and how it's done.
Okay, this is a high altitude presentation. The actual COMAR regulations are fairly complex, and so, but this will give you a broad view of what we are doing at the Board of Elections.
After the presentation, open it up for board comment.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jessica White. I'm the Voter Services Manager for the Montgomery County Board of Elections. Introduction to SEP, we're going to go over list maintenance 101. The first step of list maintenance is compliance. The Montgomery County Board of Elections is regulated by several sources and in compliance with regulations set by the State Board of Elections. The first source, of course, is federal law, the National Voter Registration Act. It's the main provision some people have spoke of today, and the Help America Vote Act as well. We also have state law that are followed, as well as the Code of Maryland for the state regulation pieces. There are two versions of the cancellation process for voters. There is a cancellation process that does not require a confirmation. That's a first step. So these types of confirmations take place. Address changes are at the request of the voter or are sent from another state in response to a voter registering in their state and providing that they no longer wish to be registered in Montgomery County any longer. Those voters are canceled from the rolls upon receipt of those confirmations. The next is deceased. There's two sources that we receive deceased notifications that don't require confirmation. The first is the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, which comes from the state of Maryland. Those voters are canceled upon that receipt. The second source is the Social Security Administration, and this source, along with the next two, do require a notification be sent to the voter to inform them that cancellation is pending and that they have the right to file if they have cause that they should not be removed. That would also include the felons. We get a list from the clerk of the district court and the circuit court that details those who should be removed due to felony. And then non-citizens do come to the jury commission, and then those are also removed after that 2-week period following a notice of sin. This is an example of a voter request for cancellation that is sent to our office requesting that we cancel them.
How do you verify that? I'm sorry, questions will be held to the end.
The second type of confirmation is a cancellation is one that requires the confirmation process, which I'll detail after we go through these sources. These are address changes that come to us by the National Change of Address Service. They also come from return mail, such as our sample ballots that get returned to us, or our polling place notifications that get returned. This also is information that comes from the Electronic Registration Information Center, ERIC, as well as address changes that come via the jury commission, as well as deceased voters that come from the jury commission, and other sources of reporting deceased voters come to us. So these are the methods that require us to go through the confirmation process. It is important to note that no voter is made or put through the confirmation process simply for the failure to vote. They do have to be triggered by one of these methods that we just went through as a change source before we can begin the confirmation process. This is some examples of return mail pieces that come from the post office with a yellow Nixie label, which is one of the sources that are used for updating addresses. For out-of-state moves, if the Nixie provides that information that the voter no longer lives in the state of Maryland and provides their name and their new address, a confirmation is sent to that voter asking if they have in fact moved. If the voter does return that confirmation, then that is positive affirmation from the voter that they have moved and cause for them to be canceled. Otherwise, they fall under the same general rules as the confirmation process. A little bit about ERIC. This is Maryland joined in 2013. 20 states and District of Columbia share information. The lists are processed every other month. It has improved the efficiency of our list maintenance processes. The Social Security Administration records and the National Change of Address were implemented into the ERIC process as of March of this year. There was a modification to state law to allow Social Security Administration records to be used as death sources. So it's fairly new to Maryland. But the full effects of these changes from ERIC even partaking in this process will not be seen until 2018. And this is a little graphic of kind of how the different data sources come together. They're created through a computer that doesn't match, and then it gives us a list of voters who appear on more than one data source from other states as a basis to start the confirmation process. The actual confirmation process, when we receive a return piece of mail, we send a confirmation notice to the voter at the new address. The confirmation must be a piece of mail that is able to be forwarded, and it must contain a postage-paid, self-addressed return card for the voter to send that confirmation back to us. Voters are made inactive after 2 weeks if there's no response received from that confirmation card, and they will remain inactive for the next 2 federal general elections. Inactive voters are canceled if they fail to vote in the 2 subsequent federal elections. This is after the process of being inactivated. The confirmation process is suspended 90 days prior to every federal election. No voter can be made inactive during this time. Inactive voters retain the same voting rights as active voters. They still appear in the poll book, but they are required to sign a written confirmation that their address is correct. If their address is not correct, but it's because of an error, they can fill out an address correction form and vote a standard ballot. Otherwise, they are required to vote a provisional ballot if they have moved or their information is incorrect. This is a little idea of kind of the timelining of what it takes to get through a confirmation process. So if we received your sample ballot back in October of 16, we cannot do anything with it at that point because of the 90 days period that we cannot work confirmations. So if we're having a good year and we're getting through these things quickly, then we may turn a card around to you in February, saying that we received a return piece of mail asking you to please update your address or confirm that the address we have for you is your current address. If we do not hear back from you in this 2-week period, you are made inactive. And then failure to vote in 2 subsequent federal elections results in the voter being canceled. But as you will note, if they're made inactive in the time period of 2016, they remain active until 2020. They remain on the rolls until 2020 when cancellation takes place. If a voter is made inactive, there are various methods that reactivates that voter's records. If they vote in any county or statewide election, if they, by own choice or through MBA, update their record or sign a petition, or if they submit an application for an absentee ballot. Those are all methods that make the voters active again. List maintenance obstacles. As I stated, the Social Security Administration, MASH, is fairly new. So previously, deaths reported outside of the state of Maryland have been difficult to come forward with a source and be able to work through from a list maintenance. College students, several of you talked about children who've moved away. This is a huge obstacle. The parent's address still remains in the state. They may or may not fill out a change of address with the post office. Some information about the NCOA is that forward orders, those little yellow stickers I showed you, they only are sent for 12 months. Once 12 months has elapsed, we get that the voter has expired forward and we no longer have a good address where they've moved to. The NCOA report that the mailers get has that information listed for 4 years. So we do get the lists after each election. We do process those lists and work through those voters in an attempt to confirm their new address. The third issue with list maintenance in this area is what many spoke to. It's a very transient population. There's a lot of people who move in and out of Maryland, D.C., Virginia, which brings its own challenges. And then the last thing is the large volume of changes we receive. We could receive 30 to 40,000 NCOA bounces when we process our list for our sample ballot mailing. In addition to work in the NCOA, we still may get back 20,000 return sample ballots. And we also receive volumes of other return mail, information from voters of moves, and other such things that we must process through. It's not unusual to take more than 6 months to process through all of the list maintenance activity after an election, just because of the vast amounts of barrels and barrels of sample ballots and other mailings that we get back. Where we're currently at, we have 59,120 inactive voters. We have 8,332 active 16 and 17-year-olds. As some people spoke to, 16 and 17-year-olds are allowed by law to register in the state of Maryland, and they do go into our rolls as active voters. So while they're not part of the statistic for our voter age population, they are part of our official count of registered voters. So are military and overseas voters. Some of these voters comprise of voters who do not live in Maryland because they have moved abroad and maybe have lived abroad for some period of time, but Maryland remains their last place of domicile, and so therefore they're extended the voting rights to vote a federal-only ballot in elections. And so they do remain part of our active counts, yet they're not typically counted as part of census or other voter counts for the voter age population. As Jim was stating, there's been almost 76,000 cancellations and subtractions since 2015. There also has been nearly 100,000 confirmation cards sent in that time period. And as I said, we are still processing sample ballots and NCOA data from the 2016 list process. And of course, we get the ERIC report every 2 months, and so that also ties into continued list maintenance activity. And then the last thing is what I showed you in that previous slide. It does take a long time to see the changes in for it all to get caught up as the data goes through, because that inactive process and the timing it takes. Anybody who was canceled after the November 2016 election, which effectively would be after July of 2016, will remain inactive on the voter rolls until 2020. So that is my information on list maintenance 101.
Jessica, a few questions. Can we open up to the board? So, on that screen, the 16 and 17, because the Judicial Watch letter compared our registered voters with the census data.
Correct.
Is that correct? Now, the 8332 active 16 and 17-year-olds, would they be on the census data?
So the census data, the Community American Survey explanation states that's the voter age population number is the number of voters who are over the age of 18 and who are citizens of the United States.
So those 8332 may not have been on the census.
Those would not have been counted in that particular statistic.
What about the 7,700 military and overseas voters?
You know, it depends on where they were at the time the survey was taken and counted. After the election, the state processes off our overseas voter labels, and so the remaining ones are mostly our voters who have stated that they are residing overseas and will be remaining overseas, or that their return is unknown. So these are typically our long-term voters who last known domicile was the state of Maryland.
So I'll be just a few more things, Dave. The board that's here now, we were sworn in June of 2015, and since then you've sent out almost 100,000 confirmations where we have information that they may not be living there anymore.
Correct.
And out of that, we've removed 76,000 since this board took...
That confirmation doesn't even encompass all of that 75,000. So many of those confirmation mailings have become active again by the means of voting, updating their registrations. We have numerous voters who update their registration but still do not vote in an election. But because they have gone through and sent us an update, they've changed their party, they've gone to the MVA and asked that their voter registration be updated, what have you. Because they have taken an action step to update their registration, they become active. Doesn't necessarily lead to them voting, but it does take them from the inactive to an active voter.
But this board, under this board's leadership, 76,000 people have been removed.
That's correct.
To me, and I'll turn it over to the board, it takes 4 years to remove someone from the rolls?
It usually takes 2 federal election cycles, so yes, it can take.
Yes. Yeah.
So it can take 4 years to remove someone?
That is the standard time
And
period.
all these rules and regulations, they come from the state?
They come from federal law and from state law, and then the guidance is handed down to us as how to administer it by the State Board of Elections.
Okay. Marianne? Marianne. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you very much. And I'm
You want to put the lights on, or should we stand up?
Sorry. I'm sure our guests here have an appreciation for how intense this process is, the many moving parts that are part of it, how labor intensive it is. It's not simply, to push a button and name pops up and you can take it off or whatever. There's all this back and forth that you go through. And there's a good reason for it. It's because, the one thing you don't want to do is deprive citizens of their right to vote. And people that are on the voter rolls and have gone through the process to register and go through and who are doing the right things by showing when they move, et cetera, et cetera. These are all things that take time in the process, and it's got to take time to then remove somebody if, in fact, they have moved out of the jurisdiction or whatever. Regarding the 16 and 17-year-olds, one of the reasons, please remember that we only have elections here every other year. So that's why a 16-year-old can register but not be eligible to vote until the next federal election. Because of the time period in there. So that's why you might think, well, it should just be 17, but because we have this 2-year process, it really does make sense to allow them to do it at 16. And I could go into lots of comments on how great this is for these kids to get them involved in civic process and interested in voting and activities that they get into within their schools. And in fact, many of them are fabulous workers at our polling places on election day. I want to associate myself with Jim's comments that absolutely voter fraud is not anything that any member of this board takes lightly. I've been a member of the board for 6 years now. I'm the former president of the board. We aggressively looked into these issues throughout my tenure, and I'm happy to be supportive of Jim in looking at it now. it's a constant going through with the staff and the staff in the registration area. Every month there are large numbers in the thousands of people that are removed from the rolls as information comes known to us. And in addition, the state board audits on a constant basis. Is it monthly, Margaret?
Yes.
Monthly, the state board is auditing our process here in the county as well. So believe me, we go the extra mile here. I appreciate for the public that it is a confusing sounding process, but I hope that you have a better appreciation for it now, and thank you again to the staff.
Mr. President?
Mr. Chair,
No, we're not going to open it up.
you're not going to open it up?
No,
No
not
questions from the audience whatsoever?
No. Not at this time.
Okay, we'll catch you the next time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alex?
Jessica, I had a question. Could you explain to me, to us in a little more detail, how it works with Social Security Administration, Jury Commissioner, and Department of Health and Mental Hygiene? Do we have to reach out to them? Are they required to give us information? How often do they do it, and what is it that they're giving us?
So the jury commission is done typically on a quarterly basis. The information from the jury commission is sent to the state, loaded back, and compared to our database of active registered voters, and any matching voters are then sent to our local jurisdiction.
How about Social Security?
The Social Security Administration has been incorporated as part of the ERIC project, and so it's incorporated into our ERIC processes. That did just start in March of 2017. And so it's a new module they put into the voter registration system, and our staff has to, like everybody that comes across ERIC or any of these cross checks, they have to check the data to make sure it is the match of the proper person based on names, date of birth, such information.
How about before that?
Before that,
ERIC?
there was and I would have to defer to our board counsel for that, but there was a change to the Maryland statutes to actually allow that information to be used. It previously wasn't allowed.
You mean
It wasn't exchanged before. It wasn't exchanged before. This is, as you'll recall, ERIC is, that's been an evolving thing. When Maryland first joined it, it was only a few states involved. Now it's growing to, we're at 20 now. So
Before, if somebody died, how do we know that person passed away?
That is part of the problem, Naheed, which is obviously if they die here in Maryland, we would know that through the state getting information from the state. On the other hand, if someone were to die out of state and we're not provided any information that would begin the notification process, then they theoretically would stay on the rolls, because it's important to keep in mind there's a case from the Court of Appeals. It's called Green Party versus the Board of Elections, and there are two important things that the Court of Appeals found in that case, which is a 2003 case, which is one, Article 1, Section 1 of the Maryland Constitution sets forth the specific reasons why someone can be canceled, and someone's failure to vote is not a reason to cancel anyone. So if you register to vote and you elect not to vote for 20 years, the Court of Appeals has said that is not a legitimate reason to remove anyone from the voting list. The Court of Appeals in Green Party also said the state used to rely on what you consider to be passive evidence that someone may not be eligible to vote anymore. Passive being almost, information that's secondhand, and the court in Green Party said you need to have affirmative evidence. So that's why we need something to trigger the confirmation process. And the state statutes are geared to address National Voter Registration Act, as well as what the Court of Appeals has said are the legitimate bases to begin the process of moving an active voter to inactive, and then an inactive voter to cancel.
Kevin, a follow-up, a related question would be, let's say the jury commissioner informs us that someone has self-identified as ineligible to serve as a juror because they are a non-citizen, and the name comes back and we find them on as a registered voter. What happens then? Should it be, is it automatic cancellation or not?
Can we do that in the county?
We do that now. There's
We
some
do it, the county can do it. We don't have to send that to the state.
No.
The county.
What we do is send a notification to the voter stating that we received notice from the jury commission that you have responded to them that you are not a citizen and that you're being removed from the rolls for being not eligible, and you have 2 weeks to show cause why that action should not take place. It is a mistake on some occasions, and we get responses.
And if you don't hear back from them,
They're
you
canceling
send
it.
them notification. And if you don't hear back, is that revolving with the jury commission? Do we, as that name comes in, they send it to you?
They do it on a quarterly basis.
Okay. And the Social Security name, how does Social Security get on to Eric? Do they take every name in the state of Maryland that has a Social Security number, every person, and put it on Eric automatically?
So there is a huge database that the Social Security Administration puts together the Master Death Index, and it is a voluntary, in some states, required in other states, across the 50 states of the United States, to provide death records to the Social Security Administration. So it's not all-inclusive necessarily. That information is purchased by Eric to be involved.
Eric purchases from the Social Security Administration all of the data on everybody from Maryland, for instance.
For the United States, it's a master record of all deaths.
Everything that's on Social Security is also on Eric. It is another
They pull it
national
in.
ID.
No, only those who have died.
Only
Only those who have died.
And it's called master death.
But you said they had all the Social Security numbers of voters.
Not Social Security numbers, just the death match.
Just
so,
for the death.
and only reportable deaths where they're required to report it, or
Thank
they
you.
voluntary
Just,
to do so.
just dead people.
Just dead people.
You're not there.
Okay, no other, David?
A couple of things. Margaret, did this process change in June of 2015, or did we do the same thing during the previous board?
Yes, the previous board followed the same COMAR regulations we're following now, except that the law did change to expand to include the Social Security Administration, and the NCOA was integrated into ERIC.
Okay, so is it safe to say that some of those 76,000 voters that have been taken off the rolls since June of 2015, that process started before that time?
Yeah, it has been an ongoing process since I came here.
Okay, thank you. I gather that the reason why there's a confirmation process for information we get from government agencies, I think we've all had the experience of government agencies not always having completely accurate information. I think where voting is concerned, and even perhaps where deaths and changes of address are concerned, that's also a possibility. Just at this table, the Motor Vehicle Administration told Jackie Phillips that she was a non-citizen, which we know is not the case. They told my mother, who's been voting in Montgomery County since 1962, that she wasn't on our voter rolls. I think I assume that is why we have a confirmation process, to make sure that the information that we get, while it's good, it may not be 100%, and so we have to we're trying to make sure that people are not losing their right to vote as a result of that.
You are correct. Again, though, Help America Vote Act and NVRA are designed to, the basic foundation is to expand voter opportunities. And so the voter is always given the opportunity to correct the record, so that if those types of mistakes that we've discussed here many times occur with a governmental institution, the voter is not shut out of the process of being able to exercise their right to vote.
And that's why the federal law has the 2 federal election delay that's not mentioned in the Judicial Watch letter.
Right.
Okay. Jim, I know you didn't mean to leave out federal law when you were talking about how the board always follows state law and state regulation. Obviously, we follow federal law as well as state law. And I think you made an excellent point that there are at least 16,000 voters that are listed as active voters on our rolls that the census would not consider necessarily to be people of voting age who live in Montgomery County. My question about the 16 and 17-year-olds is, why do we consider them to be active voters rather than inactive voters before they are eligible to vote?
Because that's the way the law was written by the state of Maryland.
Okay.
We have, in the past, and it was this board that created the requirement, the interpretation of the law was that previously they would receive a letter from us to say that they would be activated, but it was determined after much discussion with this board and the state board that in fact the way the law was written is they are considered active voters. So as an active voter, we mail them a voter notification form to inform them that we have received their registration and that they are an active registered voter.
Okay. Now, it used to be, when I was a kid, I know that that if you missed a certain number of elections, you were taken off the rolls. I gather that was before...
It's before Green Party.
Right, before Green Party and before the federal law was changed and all that. It used to be you missed, I think it was 5 years without voting or something like that. So currently, essentially, the current law protects people's rights not to vote if they so choose.
Yeah. If they choose not to vote, that's not a basis for removal.
Okay, thank you.
And David, just so everyone knows, those 16 or 17-year-olds, it is sort of, they're considered active voters, but they're put in a pending category.
Right.
Lest anyone think that we're allowing them to vote.
Right.
They
They're
don't
not
get
allowed to vote
until they're eligible, and they'd be 18 by the general election.
Right.
But they're considered to be active, but remain in a pending category.
So they're listed among our active voters in terms of the numbers, but when it comes time to vote, if a 16-year-old attempts to vote in an election before they're eligible, the poll book would indicate that they're not eligible to do that.
Correct.
Okay.
And they ended up with a provisional vote.
So there is an indication in the poll book that they're but they can still be given a provisional ballot? Is that right?
Yes.
Federal law requires it.
Federal law, Alan.
Have we rejected any of that
Oh,
category?
yes. I can tell you,
Yeah,
having done the provisional, yes.
Okay. I just have one last comment, and that is, Jessica, you had in your presentation something that I'm sure my two college student children would object to, which is the college students being labeled as obstacles. And I don't consider my children to be obstacles, but maybe others would have a different idea.
She didn't mean it like that.
I guess I want to make sure that it's clear. It's an obstacle in the sense that you don't necessarily know where they want to vote, but college students are eligible to vote here if they go away to college somewhere else. And I assume that many of them vote absentee. They come back to Montgomery County. They remain on the rolls here. I know that's what I did. But the obstacle is that you don't know whether they intend to move somewhere else permanently.
Or they have moved somewhere else permanently some period ago, but because the household, the family home they grew up in is still intact, you're not getting somebody randomly receiving their voter registration information and contacting and sending it back, saying nobody by that name lives here. And so what it usually becomes is a report from a parent stating, my child moved out of Maryland 10 years ago, please remove them. Well, again, we can't take a passive source. We have to have that actual voter, even if they're in another state, send us a request to be removed.
Well, it's also possible that college student may be continuing to vote in Maryland, and their parent may or may not be aware that they're continuing to vote in Maryland, maybe voting completely legally in Maryland.
Absolutely.
And keep in mind, the board, to try and capture more people that would get the sample ballot if the person didn't live there, redesign that front cover to make it larger print to say, if this person doesn't live here, check this box to go ahead and return it to the Board of Elections, because that would then be another way that the board could track down whether the person had moved and begin the confirmation process.
Now, the military and overseas voters, the 7,700 voters that we're talking about, is that the same category of voters that we've talked about before, where a sample ballot could show up at my house for someone who used to live there, correct, went overseas with the military? I gather that probably the State Department is the same kind of thing. So I may think that someone has never, I may not know the name, it comes to my house, but they may have lived there before and they have a right to vote from that address under federal law.
Right.
And under Maryland law.
And under Maryland law as well.
And that's home of record is what the military refers to. And I always give the good example of my brother who lives in the state of Virginia now in the military, active duty, who's registered at our childhood home in the Midwest. That's where his driver's license is from. That's where his car is registered because the military retains the right to keep their home of record as their home state. So even though he has not lived there in going on 20 years, that is his home of record and is allowed under federal and state law.
Well, Margaret, we certainly appreciate a public discussion of this issue. I know the board, we take this letter from Judicial Watch very serious, and our review and investigation of all these issues continues. And as I said earlier, there's no tolerance for voter fraud, zero. And we will do everything to look into these issues and to, I think this is a good discussion. It may lead to us proposing legislation, rules with the state, because there's a lot of explanation to do to the public. This letter is very serious to us, and we're going to continue to advise the public, keep the public informed as to what we're doing, and certainly if the public has any questions or concerns, they can always reach out to us. But this discussion doesn't end here.
Jim, I agree with you that we should take the letter seriously, but I think we also have to take seriously the other letters we've received that make clear that it's a very big deal to take people off the rolls. I know you do mean to take that seriously.
I do.
And just as we don't have any tolerance for voter fraud, we also don't have any tolerance for removing people off the rolls unless we're absolutely sure that that is the correct thing to do. And I know that our staff is very careful about doing that. There's been a lot of alternative facts that have been presented here today, and I know we don't want to argue over those facts, but from everything that I've seen in my 6 years on the board, we have always taken this, and will continue to take this very seriously.
Jim, could I ask if we could get a hard copy of the PowerPoint presentation? Yes, thank you. Send it to you.
Or a soft copy.
Yeah, electronic copy.
Okay, so I think we are gonna move on to our other business. If anybody wants to leave, we're not offended, but we're gonna take up the other issues on our agenda. And the next is the election director reports.
Okay. The meeting notification was posted on April 14th. The personnel, the IT temporary personnel have all been terminated, and I did send a memo addressing the merit system and personnel to the board last week.
I'm sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay.
Forgive me, Jim, I would like you to tell these people it would take written questions. If they have, it seems to me that there's written questions.
Yeah, certainly if anybody has any written questions they want to submit to the board, because we have much more on our agenda, we're always willing to take written questions anytime. That's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the budget.
I'm sorry. Please excuse me for just a minute.
Tomorrow.
Okay, Jim, I'm sorry.
No.
So
That's okay.
We've got it already.
Okay, budget.
Okay, budget. We went through the
Thank you.
first piece very quickly. Okay, so budget spreadsheet was sent to the board members in advance. Just a couple of things that
Can you go outside?
please.
So we're on the budget.
We are on the budget.
Okay.
Okay. Updated spreadsheet was sent to the board members in advance of the meeting. Two things that I would point out, and then of course entertain any questions anyone has. The overtime amount indicated of the amount that was spent year to date, 10.84% or $45,000. It was paid out to staff from other agencies who provided assistance to us during the election period. The other number that changed fairly significantly in the last month is under services and contracts, line item 60412, moving services. That changed as a result of a chargeback from the Department of General Services, who arranged for some of the moving services for us, and therefore there was a delay in getting that charge back. And so that's why that number changed so drastically when we're in a non-peak period. Those are the only two things I wanted to point out. Certainly happy to answer any questions on the spreadsheet, yes, if anybody has any questions about the current budget.
So, I'm sorry, Margie, so under 60412, does it mean that we have a balance?
No, we overspent this year as we anticipated.
Yeah.
Board members may recall that we did request an additional $25,000 for moving expenses because of the additional equipment that would be going out. And interestingly enough, we requested a total of $50,000. We were only given the $25,000. Ultimately, we spent $51,000. So I think the staff's estimation of what we would be spending was right on track.
Okay.
So,
thank you. That
sure.
makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions on FY17? Okay. For those who were not there on Friday, we did meet with the Government Operations Committee of the County Council, and as you were all notified, they did have some additional questions for us, and they asked for some additional information, and they will continue discussion of our FY18 budget on Thursday, April 27th, during their 9:30 work session. It's important to note, I know there was might have been some confusion. This is not a discussion next week on the reconciliation list. This is a discussion of our budget submission and whether any of the additional items that the council members brought up would be added to a reconciliation list. Of the two items that the staff requested, the election judge stipends, which of course the county executive supported, that is in the budget. The additional item of the scanners that was brought up and mentioned to the Office of Management and Budget in advance, that did go from the committee. That has been placed on the reconciliation list. So the only items for discussion this coming Thursday rather, are the three items that the council members brought up regarding outreach, advertising, and off-site training. And so we've been notified that the session starts at 9:30. They have fit us in at the end of that work session. They're suggesting that anyone who is going to be there arrive at 10:30, but be prepared to wait. There's no way to know in advance how quickly or how slowly the items in advance of ours will take. So just wanted to clarify that for those who weren't there.
Do you know what additional questions or what further information they're looking for on that?
Well,
because we had sort of a lengthy discussion.
We did. And so if you recall, the committee chair, Nancy Navarro, specifically asked if she were to double the advertising budget, what would that be? What would we be able to do with that? What would a doubling of the outreach monies be? What does that actually look at? And they asked us also, Mr. Reamer asked for information on what it would cost for additional off-site training facilities. And so we were, as you know, we pointed out during the session that off-site training included not just facility rental, but would also staffing and equipment and moving expenses to get there. And so the board had previously, staff had previously prepared for a previous board session a description of how we could distribute additional advertising monies. And so that has been provided to them as an example of what we could do, not what we would do, but an example of what could be done with additional funding. In terms of outreach, based on Ms. Navarro's comments solely, and her comment, if we double that, what would that do? So we simply notified them of how many additional workforce hours that would provide us, because that's what the outreach money that they gave us was for temporary personnel to go out to events. And so we provided them with a copy of Dr. Zelaya's report that he presented the board, that is on the website in the minutes, on what the outreach committee did with the money that they had and how many additional hours of part-time temporary personnel another $34,500 would provide. And then staff worked up an estimate for how many training hours would be needed, how much additional funding would be required for an additional 4 weeks of off-site training. And that information
can we see that in advance of Thursday?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because
yes.
I mean that's
Absolutely.
an issue I think we have a great interest in, and I know there is big money in a way attached to that. Maybe the largest is for renting facilities that are not county property, but I understand the other.
Well, one of my questions to the board is, because this is going on a reconciliation list, and one of the things...
It may be going on a reconciliation list.
Correct. It may be going on a reconciliation list. So one of the questions that would be asked is, what is the board's highest priority? Is it outreach? What's the second highest priority? Is it advertising? What's the third? I mean, that's a decision. I mean, this is what the board needs to tell us. Yeah, because I don't know if everyone can be, I don't know if anybody can sit there all morning long waiting for the committee to get to that topic for elections. So I guess that would be one of the things that we would like to hear is if the amount of advertising monies were doubled, and in FY16 you had a $49,000 budget proposed originally to the county executive, is that your highest priority? Or is it outreach, and do you want to go out and teach people how to make sure that they're executing their vote and seeing the equipment?
Well, speaking for myself, obviously we've been fighting for the outreach money for a long time. We go in every year and say we can always use more money for that, and I'd like to see more money for that. But I think, given the time, given this election, and we'll be getting into it in the next report of the state board meeting, the potential that we're going to have paper coming out our ears in the primary with the ballots, if we're not going to have the machinery to do it for the primary, for the early voting sites. Training is going to for the poll workers is vitally important, and getting poll workers is vitally important. This primary is in June. It's going to be very, very difficult, I suspect, in recruiting election judges, and anything we can do to, the good news is we're going to have the increased stipend for them, but I think to make training more available to them, to take the training where the people are, so to speak. I would like to see that issue really moved up in the scale of our priorities to see if we can get additional funding there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But Mary, do you think,
Judge
is that something that
recruiting.
they've talked about, though, that Mrs. Navarro talked about giving us more money for, or is that something we really need to
Well,
educate her about?
in terms of priorities.
It came up through, from.
Well, you were there. I mean, I was there, but I don't remember. I thought she was talking more about advertising and, you know.
She was, but
that was hers,
Mr. Reamer was talking about this one.
Mike, did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I think the executive would appreciate that as you're looking for places that you look for government facilities, rec centers, libraries, regional service centers. There are plenty of places around the county where you're not going to have to pay.
There really aren't, though, Mike. The difficulty and Margaret can speak to it better than I, but as I understand, the difficulty is that the amount of time that we require to take over the facility, those facilities are not looking for people to come in there for free. Well, they're booked to begin with. It's hard to get time scheduled with them.
For example, if you wanted to do a site in Rockville, I could reserve the lobby auditorium for the space and time that you need. Or we could call department directors and get that space.
You mean for training?
For the training, correct.
Oh, for the training.
Yeah, judge recruitment is crucial, and training.
Well, I guess to me, the facility is not the cost. The facility is getting the additional trainers,
right,
and getting the additional support staff to do all the paperwork that comes with sending it off-site. We would probably continue to look at county facilities first. And rental, I mean, the cost to this has never been the rental of facilities. The cost has always been related to utilizing staff, temporary staff, hiring enough temporary staff. And then the other issue that I see is, let's say you do get 2 weeks at, what's the name of that facility that you found over in Colesville?
It's
the sorority.
It's a sorority that is willing to talk to us.
Talk to us, and they're talking about giving it to us for free. But it's moving the equipment. I mean, we have to hire. In order for the training to be effective, they need to have everything. They need to have the big black card. They need to have the touchscreen. They need to have. I meant the express vote. They need to have the scanner. We need to bring in fake ballots so that they have the ability to sort them out. And bring in the various bags. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that has to come. So, and those big lift trucks, between moving them there and moving it back, is what, $1,000?
It's $300 a day, so 2 days on either side. So
I'm sorry, $600.
So,
and making sure that we have, John available or somebody with a net knows how to handle a truck. So to me, getting the facility, the county has plenty of facilities.
Well, Margaret, you said last month that we needed to have no-cost facilities.
That's right.
But it sounds like, first off, the council made very clear that they're willing to pay for whatever it takes to do this, whether that's for the facility. I mean, I don't think they particularly care whether it's for the facility or the people or the moving of the truck from one place to the other. So certainly we have nothing against county facilities if they're available for this purpose. It just has to be convenient to the people who are our target audience at the time that we need it.
And how long do you need a facility for one training session?
Usually cannot be in a facility for less than 10 days.
Right.
Okay.
It's a long.
It's got to be 10 days.
10 days.
And so that we can give the board has directed the staff that we not only have to have our full-time election judges, but we have to have these various types of temporary judges. And now that we are going to, at early voting, the state board is in the process of, fine-tuning the training to deal with all of these different ballot styles. We're probably going to have special type of training for the early voting judges that are going to be working at the ballot. Well, it's not going to be a ballot table. It's going to be a ballot table and shelves and drawers and everything else.
From an efficiency standpoint of staff hours, and we've had, for example, the Silver Spring Civic Building, which is, not a cheap site to rent, very desirable. They have been very generous. They have given us as much as 3 weeks of time at the Silver Spring Civic Building in the past, but it's not consecutive. It's a week here, it's a week there.
Right,
It's
hard to get it consecutive.
to get it there, to get it back, to get it there, to get it back. You're losing as much as 4 days of staff time involved in merely tacking up the equipment to take it there and to get it back.
Do we have any idea what their availability is for the spring? Next spring?
I know calls have been made. I don't know.
Margaret, I spoke to Silver Spring, and they're willing to help us out with whatever we need at no charge. But if we're going to use the facility, we need to act on it now, because they will book up, and then we won't have that long period of time like we would like to look at 2 or 3 weeks consecutive.
Well, the council committee voted 3-0 while we were sitting there to do this. I think they made very clear that they're going to be providing, I don't remember exactly what the amount was that they talked about, but they're going to provide,
money. Yeah, they're not micromanaging it. They just want to give us.
Well, and with all due respect, in speaking with the council staff, they have not promised us any money for this. That's the whole purpose of us coming back this week, is for them to garner a sense of what it would cost and to do something like this. And then what they are equipped to do at this stage in the game is to make a recommendation that X amount of money be placed on the reconciliation list, which would then go before the full council, and everything on the reconciliation list, then everything gets picked over, and some people win and some people lose. So while yes, the Go committee was extremely supportive, it was their recommendation to us to come back with more information on this. They have not promised us any money in the budget. They have asked us to provide them with information with the potential Thursday of having additional funding added to a reconciliation list that the full council would vote on.
What is needed in order to reserve the Silver Spring facility? Do we need to have a final vote on a budget, or will the Silver Spring facility reserve its space based on the possibility, and then obviously we'll know in a few weeks what the budget situation is? Because it sounds like our costs may be going down substantially if we can use cost-free facilities, because what the council discussion was all about was about making sure that we could get whatever facility we needed.
Mike, do you want to jump in? Mike?
I mean, couple things. One, remember, whatever dollars go on into the reconciliation list, it's going to be highly competitive.
Right.
Highly competitive. Right. I mean, there's already one that we know of that could be $5 million. Whatever cost avoidance that you can come up with, and we will work closely with you to do that, is going to make it easier to fund all of the pieces that Margaret enumerated. And 3, whatever assistance the executive's office can give you in getting those facilities for those decisions that are made. Silver Spring, for instance, we'll call up to Mr. Dice.
Can you
find
get
out
them
what those requirements are?
Can you get them reserved now, so that we can
Yes.
so that when we get on the list, like you said, it's so competitive that way our cost is that much less for everything else.
And I appreciate, I don't know if we're talking about Silver Spring generically, but the other piece of it is, while there is an advantage to a certain segment of the society that lives around Silver Spring, there is another element of the population that lives further north and east and that we need to move up to, because we hold
right.
at
Silver
White
Spring was
Oak.
one example.
White Oak.
Yeah.
We've used
Yeah,
the
White Oak could be-
Montgomery College in
Right.
Rockville
Right.
for free,
Right.
and we will continue to extend.
Right.
The question is managing not only the training that's going on here, because we have 3 training rooms. The board, when this building was modified to meet the board's needs, it was expected the vast majority of board training would occur here. But we acknowledge that we need to extend to other locations in the county, And the last go around, 20% of our classes were outside of this facility. We've heard the board say they want more, so we're going to push for more classes. But the monies that we need are, the monies that we spend, where we're in the hole, is temporary staff and overtime. And it's the temporary staff, and a lot of them are trainers. So we believe that, we could get facilities for X amount of period of time. It's the people in there to train them.
Margaret, I've heard you talk before about the 3 training rooms here that are in use. Is there any reason all 3 of those have to be in use here if we have if we can take the people and the equipment from one of those and put it to one of these off-sites for a period of 2 weeks?
We do that. We do that now.
And
we are conducting
you do
classes,
with less than the 2.
We do
so,
maybe 2 classes here.
So
and
I'm
1
not
class
seeing
over
a great increase in personnel if it's a matter of balancing, out where they are. They don't all have to be here. Some of them can be off-site.
Right, but it still takes personnel to get all of the equipment over there.
Right.
We still have to get all of these individuals trained. We have to make sure, and when it first starts out, we also need to make sure they're doing the training correctly, instead of coming up with at the last minute, just instructions.
Gracie?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So can we go back a little bit, because I'm sorry I wasn't at the county council hearing, but can you give me the 3 things that we're looking at?
The 3 items that
outreach, and then I have
advertising.
Advertising was the 3rd.
Off-site training.
Training.
And during the work session, I did point out to the council members that the off-site training did not just mean facilities.
Right.
That we needed other things in addition to that. And so, like staffing, like truck rental, and depending on how the schedule is worked, there could be a need for additional equipment such as projectors or something like that are needed for a training location.
If we followed the path that Mary Ann just described, where at some points in time we operated 2 classes here and 1 on the road, would that mean that our staffing needs would then be less?
I mean, that's effectively what we do now. That's what we have the manpower to do now. So if we are able to augment the resources that we have here with additional staff to more efficiently go to an off-site location and teach classes there, and as you know, it's pulling teeth to get people to come to training classes months before Election Day. If we were able to augment our manpower closer to Election Day in order to have more simultaneous classes, that would give us a lot more flexibility in staffing as well.
And I think that's a good idea. I mean, my point about this is one who brought it up, I guess, I don't remember if it was last month or the month before, was that we got a map from you all of where people live, and a lot of them are living further east and further south of here, and this is a very difficult spot to get to after work. And so through no fault of ours, I mean that's just 270. And to the extent that we can move a higher percentage out to where the people are in order to get, I mean, I think the goal is to try and make it as convenient as possible, because yes, it is pulling teeth to get people to come early, but for some people it'll be less pulling teeth if we make it more convenient for them.
Well, I'd like to also point out that, if you look at a map and you divide the county along the ICC and going down Shady Grove, half of the population lives north. So that means approximately half of the election judges need to be trained at this location.
But you said that 80% of them were done in the past.
80% of the people that were trained in the last election
were trained here.
Okay.
Okay.
And 20% were downtown.
I'm fine with 50%.
Yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I'm just one person, but I mean, I agree with you that, I mean, I'm not suggesting that we should move all of our training away from the up county. We have to have judges in the up county, the down county, east and west. I mean, but I just think that if we make it more convenient for people to come, you know, we're going to have a hard, as Marianne said, I think we're going to have a hard time like we did the last time there was the June primary because of the vacation schedules and et cetera. I think it's going to be difficult to get people. The easier we can make it for people, the better off we are.
So, David, you're talking about having more sessions.
I'm talking about
not the same number, just in different places.
I'm talking about having more sessions outside of here than we've had in the past.
Then would the formula be that we need to find out how much it costs per session, or however you would break it down, and then ask for whatever more you think we should be having?
Not necessarily more total sessions. It's the way I view it. It's perhaps we have enough sessions, but we need to expand the geography of them.
Like, why
well, it also depends on what you're comparing.
If we're talking about money, if we're talking about money, we need to find out how much a session costs and where it costs, and ask for that. Isn't that basically what we're saying here?
Well,
if we have 10 sessions, for instance, total, let's
10 days.
Picking a number, 10 days.
It's more than 10
whatever.
sessions.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Then how much a session costs, and decide where you want those sessions, and then put the number on that. Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It seems to me it's a fairly simple formula to work out here.
So just so I understand, the board is placing this facility rental, because that's the way the council characterized it as number one, and advertising and outreach is 2 and 3, or outreach, advertising.
Can they be tied for 2?
That's not
really the way priority order works.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Maybe outreach. Facility, outreach, and
I would say outreach would do really well right now. I would
because we've complained about how little we had to do with advertising.
I think advertisement, we're always fighting for crumbs.
Yeah.
And we may be able to advertise in other media.
If we
by
do
having
outreach, that does part of the advertising. We are outreaching.
They divide them up.
I agree that outreach does result in advertising.
Yeah.
A form of advertising.
Right. Formalized.
When we talk advertising, though, we're talking about the print and.
I know that, but I'm saying that if we educate the voter, therefore we don't. Maybe the advertising is second from that. We do outreach and then we do advertising, because we have to have 1, 2, 3. We cannot have them all number one. So we have to give up something.
I would suggest advertising would be second. I really think our outreach efforts, especially the way Dr. Zelaya has it, and the stuff the staff does, and.
Hey, let's just go around. Who thinks what should be number 2?
I think advertisement.
Dave?
Advertising.
Outreach? What do you think?
Outreach. That does the same.
Advertising.
Advertising.
Okay. Advertising is 2, and
Fine.
outreach is 3.
But we really want all 3.
Remember, we want it.
Yeah. So you got 1, 2, and 3. Okay.
Okay.
That's the budget?
Yes, sir.
And you'll send something by us before Thursday on that, Margie. Thank you.
And I unfortunately have a work commitment and will not be able to be there on Thursday, but I know that Mary Ann plans to be there, and I think
Margaret, on the voter registration, I didn't get what's our, as of today, what's our active voter registration? Do we have that number?
It was 657,000.
Okay.
548 active voters.
657,000 plus?
548 voters.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Okay, voter registration, monthly statistics have been posted, and as Jessica said, we are still processing the returned sample ballots and the other NCO yellow sticker changes that we received from the voters and the post office.
We'll be getting Eric soon, very soon.
And Eric will be coming soon. Okay, then the State Board of Elections. In my report, the State Board is preparing the voter registration forms to be printed for the upcoming fiscal year. They advise the local boards to proof it. We received it. We've completed proofing it. Paul Allmeyer, the SBE IT staff person, briefed the election directors on the issue related to the ES&S Express voter ballot marking device. The upgrades to the software fix only the addition of a column so that the screen could display 14 names. The navigation issue related to paging and moving from one race to another remains unresolved. If the upgrade would be put in place, then all the equipment would need to have the firmware upgraded, servers, DS200, A50 scanner. And these changes that are coming with the initial fix would make the system incompatible with the 2016 system, and all of the 2016 system would no longer be available. So the state staff recommended that we maintain the election system software version that we currently have. Marianne attended the afternoon meeting with Allison. I did bring a ballot marker. And Nahid, I'm sorry, Nahid. We have the ballot marking device here. So, as you recall, the clip end goes in here. So this is the primary ballot from 2016. So, okay, so we're activating the card. So the issue of the navigation is just for the race, you have the more, so that you could see all of the candidates' names. So in this case, for President of the United States, there were so many candidates it went on 2 pages. But the issue then that caused this not to be utilized is that coming off of the DS or D-Volt system, we're used to using this for next, and you would skip the race. So, and nobody wants that to happen. Instead, we want everyone to see all of the candidates' names. And then, but if you did, Janet, so I didn't select that more. And if I go forward,
Go forward because you selected one.
okay.
You have to go to the race. You have to select.
Okay, you go. Okay,
Now it comes up.
so what happens in this example is that because the person did not go to the second page to see the rest of the names, this message board comes up. And it's confusing. It normally takes me like 2 or 3 times when I'm doing the ballot testing for content to get back into the spirit of things. But I will tell you that when I was voting, I did not have any problems. But that was me. Kevin voted on the ballot marking device. Who else in the staff voted on the ballot marking device? Okay.
May I speak to this?
Sure. Okay.
I was pretty incensed at the state board meeting upon hearing this, and I actually heard that was going to be the decision before, so I requested to speak at the state board on the issue. I attended the state board meeting in January of 2016. When the issue came to light, it was a judge from Anne Arundel County, Judge Vitale, came to the state board meeting, and you'll notice her name began with a V, And she was going to be on the second page of the ballot that she was on. And so that was upsetting. In addition, there was the problem with the toggling back and forth between the pages, which you can see from Margaret's demonstration. I mean, it's difficult. It's faulty. And it takes you back too far, you skip a page, you spend a lot of time there, and what we don't need is people spending a lot of time in voting booths. So, ES&S, the company that produces the system, was at that particular meeting. Now, this was in January, and you'll recall our primary, it was the presidential primary, was in April. And so ES&S said, oh yeah, that's a software fix. That's we have to develop something else. But oh gee, you really don't have time between now and then. I mean, there would be a cost, but the primary thing was the time. And so there were questions raised by board members at that time about, well, could this be done if we didn't use the machines then for the primary? Could the fix be made before the next one in 2018? Oh, yeah. So imagine my shock at hearing that, no, they're not going to do it. First of all, apparently ES&S got back and said, well, we've got a fix for the 7 names. We can do 2 columns now and have up to 14. This is going to be a big issue, certainly in the Montgomery County elections, because I think there's a potential for more than one election to have a lot of names, and they somehow were dismissive of this other issue of the toggling back and forth. And what I understand about that issue is that it's a real problem. It's an error, if you will, in their entire system. That requires a much bigger fix. But to hear the state board staff say, well, they're only able to fix the one part of it, the 7 names, to expand that, and we've got all these 6,000 pieces of equipment that we have to go in and make these changes to, and the expense of it all, and nobody can get even an estimate of what the expense is, and there just isn't time. And I said to the state director, I said, there isn't time. I mean, this is April of 2017. We're talking a primary in June of 2018. Surely, to heaven, there's time for this to all take place. For whatever reason, the state staff does not want to proceed with this. The state board was very unhappy in hearing this. They, in fact, want ES&S to come in there and talk about this. Many of the state board, they remembered well the January 2016 meeting and couldn't believe that, why isn't this fixed? And so I think the issue is still out there, and I would suggest that we should hold feet to the fire.
I would agree with Mary Ann. I've been to several meetings where it's been discussed down there. Completely agree with you, and I think that we should immediately send a missive to the head of the state board. I think we ought to send something to the governor about it. I think it needs to be fixed. I think it can be fixed. And I don't have any idea why it's been dismissed by the state. But we might be the only county it's a problem in, and that might be why.
This is the problem.
And that's tough.
And of course, I spoke to the numbers that we're dealing with. If we have to go to all paper ballot for the primary, we're looking at between 65 and 75 individual ballot styles that will have to be at every early voting site. Because remember, at early voting, you've got people from all over the county can come and vote. We have 3 congressional districts, 5 councilmanic districts, and 8 legislative districts. It's, it's just, it's huge. It's huge.
We have to make sure that that's understood, and maybe what we do is ask the state to, if they're not going to change this, to send more help to us in some other manner. That needs to be defined. I think we need to be very strong and make sure everyone understands our problem here in Montgomery County in light of everything we're going through here. I think it needs desperately to be understood that we, unlike other counties, need a special attention, and we must get it. And Jim, I'd like to make a motion that we send a very strongly worded letter with great explanation about our problems here to the governor, to the state board, and to anybody in the legislature we need to, and of course to our county executive.
Yeah, just to clarify for the record of people listening, we're going to have 11 early voting sites. Anybody in the county, if you live in Damascus, you can vote in Silver Spring. So each one of the 11 early voting centers has to have a ballot for where they live. And Margaret estimates at least 65 to more different ballot styles have to be at all 11 early voting sites.
And everybody trained to use them that's at those sites.
Which there's a risk that a voter would get the wrong ballot at early voting. That machine, when you sign in, has the ability to print out the ballot for you at any one of the 11 early voting sites. Not having that machine will have us thousands and thousands of paper ballots, and there's a risk that a voter might get the wrong ballot. So I think that's an excellent suggestion. David?
I'm going to vote for your motion. I just have a question. Someone who had spoken to someone at the state board had suggested to me that the issue may not be how fast the fix can get done, but how fast it can get approved by the Federal Election Assistance Commission. I wanted to know if anyone has any information about how, is that a well-founded concern, or?
I think it is.
With a
year and a half?
Yeah, how long does that?
I don't know how long it takes.
And if
the commission even going to be in existence?
And if that's one, but if we make an appointment with the commission to say we're going to have this that needs to be okayed, and please free up some time, it seems to me that then they can. We tell them it's coming, it's not going to be a surprise to them. And perhaps other ways we can get them to move more quickly.
Well,
But
the
Mary
other
Ann,
piece of this, though, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
No, my question to Mary Ann was, so ES&S indicated that 14 months, they couldn't do the software change in that amount of time?
No, that isn't the situation. We don't know what ES&S said, nor do we know what the cost is involved. This was decided by the state board. I mean,
and they indicated
Linda said, "Oh, there's not enough time." And she more or less was focused on the fact that they had to go into 6,000 pieces of equipment and do all this updating.
Do we know if the time that she was referring to was the time for ES&S or the time for Election Assistance Commission, or both?
I
don't know specifically, but I doubt very much that was coming from ES&S, because they even indicated in January of 2016 that if need be, they could have made changes back then, even given the tight time frame, but it would be exorbitant to pay for it because it was so tight.
And then this email from the state from this morning, is it from this morning? I'm sorry, from Friday, says that the issue is the budgeting for this.
So, and I apologize if some of this is saying over what was already said, because I stepped out of the room briefly. But the way that state board staff has articulated this to me, we have an existing version of the firmware that's on this machine and all of the rest of the equipment. And then there is an upgraded version which has already been certified by the Election Assistance Commission and is available for use by the state of Maryland.
I'm sorry, there's an upgraded
There is
version
an
that
upgraded
already
version.
exists.
That has more people on it.
The upgraded version
Yeah.
has more
Yeah.
people on it.
But
It
it hasn't
does
been
not
approved.
change.
It
It has been approved. It
It
has more
doesn't- it
people.
doesn't change the toggle.
It does not change the toggling mechanism.
Okay.
So available for use now by the state of Maryland is this one that makes one change but not the others.
Okay.
The state's decision is not to update to the new version of the software
That would make too much
because
sense.
it does not do enough, because it does not fix the navigation concerns, because it only fixes the number of candidates that are on the screen. So the way that the state staff has phrased the
I'm sorry,
question.
can you say that again? Because it kind of did not make sense right now. So it does fix the problem,
If it's one out of two
but it
problems.
doesn't fix
candidates to the
everything
screen.
they want.
It adds more candidates to
Everything
the
we
screen.
want.
So if you have enough candidates to fit on one screen,
Right.
now you go from having 7 candidates to 14.
Okay.
You can see it all on one screen.
Correct.
But if you have 15, 16, 17, 18 candidates, then you still have more than one screen, and you
Okay.
still have a navigation issue.
What happens when you go to the second screen after the 14 and you want to go back? When you say
Same
there's
thing that happens.
That's the same, yeah.
Right, but what precisely happens? It goes back. It goes back before the first 14 to the page
Depends
before
which
that.
button you push. It depends. The part of the problem is the visuals on the toggling. If you have on the candidate race, you hit more or more depending on which direction you need to go. Whereas if you want to change the page, which is the ticket, okay, or the ballot ticket, then you press next or prior, I think is the word, back. So the problem is exactly as Marianne described it. It is a toggling issue that creates confusion, and it's not been resolved.
Except that Allison said it has been resolved.
There are two problems, Gracie.
Okay.
There are two problems. They've solved one, but not the other. My question is,
Well,
they
haven't solved it. They made it so that it's 14 instead of 7.
They've
But if you have a
solved-
race that has 20 people, you still have the same problem.
Right.
The position of the state staff is that fixing the navigation issues is not doable, period. That can't be done. And put your certification
physically
in time for the
impossible,
election.
or not done in time because of either budget or time.
Not within the scope of the options on the table. Let me just put it that way. I don't know that I can speak for the state board and all of their discussions.
But
with the
based
Election
on the
Assistance
company?
Commission.
Like
But-
Well,
but the notion
here's
of
an
changing
there's
the
an
navigation
interesting
is not-
issue on that, though, Allison, and I think you might have been privy to the side conversation. There were some people in attendance at that meeting who understand certainly better than I the technical aspects of this whole software involved, and they claim that this is a real flaw coming right from ES&S in this system, this navigation issue, and that is an error, if you will, in their program that they should be responsible for correcting.
I guess that was my next question. I don't understand why there's no accountability for a product that we got with a flaw in the system, which is going to affect our elections. But yeah, we have to pay them more money to fix their flawed product.
And somebody
and
said
that's-
they'd fixed it. Now, some other company.
That makes no sense.
What was that story about? There's another company that said that they could fix it or they had it fixed.
I hadn't heard that.
Well, I think the options as
Maybe
the
it was
state
down
staff
there
have
we
presented
heard.
them were upgrade for what they considered to be a marginal benefit and significant cost, or don't upgrade. And so they decided don't upgrade. Now, in terms of the broader questions of the contract and what's doable or not doable beyond that, that's
I don't think any other county is sharing our concerns. That's a problem.
No, PG County was
PG?
No, and unfortunately, our sister county in Prince George's, they take the position they just don't like that system, period, and they don't want to use it. They're happy to have
Paper.
hundreds of ballots all over the place.
So who do you suggest we direct a letter to? Kevin? Can you do a draft of it,
I would
Kevin?
do it to the governor and to David McManus.
State
No legislative?
No.
Well, they're not.
No.
I don't know that they're going to be able to really do anything.
Could you draft something?
Yes.
Well, do we need a motion?
There was a motion, you need a second and a
I made the motion.
Second?
Second.
Any
I
dis-
send, I suggest we send copies to the committee chairman in the legislature to let them know that this
And our
this
old
is
friends in the
a
legislative.
burning
oversight
issue
committee.
with us,
Which committees would that be?
or whatever.
Would that,
If they know the,
yeah, we got
what is it? The
Ways and Means
It has
has
a-
jurisdiction
has an odd-
Ways and
over,
Means.
over elections on the House.
Ways and
And
Means.
it's the,
And the budget.
it's health and environment, I think, in the Senate.
Wait, all right,
Yeah,
Kevin, can you,
something
all right,
odd.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed? Kevin, can you draft the letter? And
Okay, going on
Hopefully I'm
further
done
with
for this.
ES&S. They're also working with another vendor to resolve the slow processing of the network. The State Board staff expects to receive a preliminary report in the next 60 days. And this is when the information, the tabulation here at the server center locally is transmitted to the State Board. And in the last election, it could be very, very slow. It would take us, hours to upload. The State Board also informed us that the election night reporting system that was offered by ES&S has been discontinued, and that we are to return to utilizing our county system. So Janet's reached out to Chris Daniels, the Department of Technology Services, to say, welcome back, you're not retired. Poll books will have a software update, and batteries will be replaced, hopefully during the third quarter, and further information will be provided when available. Additional scanners for the local boards of election will be made available with the standard cost split of 50-50. The boards are to include in their equipment request and include additional equipment for any additional early voting sites. And the cost of the modems and the routers will be 100% the local cost, which it was in the past.
Oh, okay.
New inventory system for the state of Maryland is in place. The state's going to come out to each of the local boards for the inventory system. It's probably going to take them 5 to 8 days to do all the equipment here. The state board also reconvened their election judge committee to address the training issues for the 2018 election cycle. And the committee is going to discuss the new legislation that permits 16-year-olds to serve as election judges and decide if there's any type of restrictions. And then the Spanish language working group, there's going to be a meeting between the two counties initially, and we're going to, kind of scope out how much work needs to be done and submit names for the state, and then the state is going to get back to us as to what exactly, how they plan to have this bilingual committee and how they want to develop their membership. And with that, legislation.
Legislation, you have a chart of the election bills we were tracking that passed. Not a whole lot of bills on it. We were following them throughout.
It was sent in the advance package.
What's probably most notable here is what's not on it, which was the Prince George's County delegation-led bill for the additional scanners. But did you already cover in your state board update that they said? Okay, so it's already been discussed. The state board is going to proceed and expect a request from us. So the biggest one here is probably House Bill 353, the change in administrative policy affecting voting rights. The state board staff have indicated that because this applies to them as well, that they will take the lead on providing us some guidance on how to approach giving the notice before and after of a change in administrative policy. And then the other noteworthy ones here, number one, campaign signs will now be allowed to be placed beginning at 5 p.m. rather than waiting until 7 p.m.
The night before.
What House bill is that? The night before. This is House Bill 619.
Thank you.
And then, of course, House Bill 1626 remedies that difference between the ID standard that applied for previously registered voters who cast a provisional ballot. Now the standard is the same for both early voting and election day.
It's a good question about that. 619. The facilities must begin allowing campaign signs to be placed in the premises. If it's I'm thinking a library that's having a big meeting that night, people are allowed to put their signs up, even if there's another meeting or something going on in the facility that would block the signs.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, these are the campaign signs that are outside. The
I understand what it is. I'm just saying if there's some other event going on in that place at that night, it doesn't.
They have to work around it.
They have to do it.
Is it
So
like
now
that?
it's 7, and now they've just pushed it back to 5.
Yeah.
Many years ago, it was midnight.
I'm just thinking about the Chevy Chase Women's Club up there that has auctions and bookshelves and all kinds of book shows and all kinds of things. That campaign signs would interfere with the signs announcing their.
I'm thinking about schools. That schools sometimes their activity bus don't come
Yes,
to 5.
yes.
Well, really?
Yeah.
Well,
That's what I thought about Gracie.
Oh,
You know,
You've got
you
extra
bet.
I didn't even
activities
realize
going on.
that was an
I
issue.
think it's a really
We
bad
did
idea.
share those thoughts with
We did actually.
members of
I
the
personally testified, and I cited the fact that I don't pick up my son from after care until 6:30.
Right, it's after care until about 6:30.
And cars in and out with
school activities.
children walking
Yeah,
around
well-
at 5
Well,
o'clock.
it's the law now.
yes,
Yep.
It's
Well,
law
5
now.
o'clock. Now we all have to just.
passed by everybody who's running for
Okay.
re-election.
I'm not completely.
And a few who probably aren't.
Okay, so, that's it.
But it is.
Board Attorney report,
I don't have anything new to report. Knock on wood, it's quiet in the legal world.
okay.
Well, not really.
You're naive, Kevin.
Yeah.
Jim, you were gonna
Yes.
report on your
Yes.
reaching
Yes,
out?
and this was basically Jackie's idea, which is excellent. Yeah, I've spoken to the presidents of Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Prince George's, and Howard County, and they're all on board with getting together, working on legislative ideas, rule changes that affect the big counties. The only one I haven't been able to reach is Bill Volpe, the president of Anne Arundel. I've called him a number of times. I just can't get through. They're all on board. At the June meeting, the only two that I spoke to that are going to be there are Eleanor Wang from Baltimore City and John Rowe from Prince George's. Howard County and Baltimore County, they're not going to this convention. We start the dialogue and
Exactly.
and begin trying to coordinate with these other big counties. I mean, they don't have the issues that we do. I just sense talking to them that a lot of the things that are concerns of us are not on their front burner, but they're willing to talk and.
Are you going to come up with an agenda, Jim?
Yeah, we will. Let's all put it together. Yeah.
And so how many will be there in June?
Two others beside us.
Howard?
John Rowe, Prince George's.
Prince George's.
And
Baltimore City.
Baltimore City, Eleanor Wang.
Yeah.
And we'll just make sure, Jim. I think that the others know where and when, and
Oh,
if they want to
absolutely.
come down for the day or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're all on
Good
board.
job.
All on board, and
Good job.
we'll see. But nobody's got the issues we've got. Nobody's got the
Really? We're special.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
we're a leading indicator too, because a number of them wanted to get the 2 scanners after we did.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right.
That was mentioned in State Board. We didn't have that much problem because we had 2 scanners.
We're famous now.
Versus Baltimore County.
Montgomery
We're
County.
forward thinking.
So we have the highest registration,
Yeah.
voter registration in
Yeah.
the state. What's the next?
Yes, we know we do.
Yeah, there's
That's what
a
I
joke
thought.
there, but.
Okay.
A little more
New
laid back.
business.
All right, communications report.
Okay.
I just wondered under old business, the personnel classifications.
Oh, you must have been out, nobody asked.
That was brought up under personnel, but nobody said anything.
I'm sorry. Okay.
You want a little short
Can
redo? Give her a short redo on that?
Was it a read?
No,
it must have been
from
real
the
short.
report.
I don't think I was out that long, was I?
I didn't hear it either.
I didn't hear it either.
Well, thank you for to both Margaret and Allison for the detailed report. I am struck by the fact that nothing seems to, or at least for a long period of time, nothing has changed.
Well, 65% of the employees have had their jobs reclassified
In what time period?
in the last 10 years.
But is it the last 5 that there's been nothing?
No, we just had a program specialist upgrade. So, and a program specialist in 2016 was upgraded to a program manager. So actually the letter, or putting together this report, I was actually pleased at how successful we have been in terms of reclassifying the number of people that we have. But the office service, OSC, office clerical,
Office Services Coordinator.
that is the position that a lot of our employees are in, and I have talked to the director of HR to ask her, as they do an audit of the various personnel classifications, to find out how we can improve career mobility for those individuals that are in that classification. And Allison, do you want to talk about the off-year June box and this?
Sure. So employees have the opportunity once a year, every June, there's a window of time when an employee can submit a request to the county to have their position evaluated. And what we've found, and what Margaret's memo alludes to, is that, quite frankly, when the county looks at a position and the county says we're going to look at all positions in this category and we're going to see whether this is appropriately classed or how this class, they sort of reevaluate the class, that tends to result in more upward classifications of employees here. When employees individually request them, that tends not to be, as frequently. That doesn't occur as frequently. And, I think the standard is a little bit higher because the employee is saying, that what I'm being asked to do is not within the scope of my position, as opposed to saying what's the best fit for this position. And so, the employees absolutely have the opportunity to do that, and it has been done successfully in our department. The county also has, also does periodically go through and take a look at certain positions and evaluate them as well.
Does McGeo represent our staff?
Yes,
So they can also go through the union, can't they?
yes, and they have.
Yeah. Okay.
So is there a problem that we have
vacant positions
this
were very-
off-year situation? In other words, the elections are every other year.
Oh, yes.
Is that a problem with these positions?
I agree with Margaret's take on evaluating the decisions that we've gotten back. The fact that we are perceived to have a different type of work going on when we're in an election cycle, especially supervisory authority. When staff are supervising staff, during the heat of an election cycle, and they're not supervising temporary employees, the rest of the year, then that is not taken to be as much of an illustration of senior level work as if that was somebody who had year-round supervisory authority year in and year out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That just seems very unfair.
It does. I know.
Because obviously the staff doesn't choose when the elections are, and you need people who have a certain skill set when the elections do take place, including the ability to supervise people. I mean, it's like changing someone's grade when an employee leaves, not a temporary employee. You have fewer direct reports, therefore your grade lowers. I mean, that just doesn't, I don't know any business that does that. Is there anything we can do to help?
The merit system is very clear that this is an administrative function of the county executive who has charged Tim Firestein and the HR director. And as I mentioned in the memo, HR is right now in the process of beginning the process of auditing the various personnel classifications. But right now, it is the employee that if they wish to request a reclassification, that's completely up to the employee. And we've been supportive every time an employee has asked for that request.
Well, that's great to hear.
Yeah, that is.
I wasn't suggesting that we would do something for a particular employee. I'm just saying that if there's a systematic policy that is working to the detriment of our staff because the elections are only held every 2 years and not every year. First of all, you never know when a special is going to be, and you've had a number of those too. I would think that would be a matter of policy to treat people based on the their job description can't really change. You can't decide that their job description is one thing in odd numbered years and another thing in even numbered years.
Is this something that's been pointed out to HR and to? I mean, because I guess everyone thinks they're unique in some way or another, but I think our work is in the sense that you have 1 year doing things one way and lots of activity and supervision, etc., and then another year, not that they aren't busy and doing things, but they're doing different things, and they don't have the same supervisory or whatnot that might, raise things up. But
all I can tell you, is that with regards to our merit system employees as well as our union employees, it's covered in the county charter, and the employee certainly can come to us and tell us that they wish to participate in the June box, is what we call it, and to have their current classification reviewed. And we support them, and we do what we can to help them define what their next role would be in the county. And I have spoke to the HR director about the office service clerical position, and feel that in the past it hasn't really been a career mobility position, and that they need to change that, because these individuals that are working for us bring a lot of talent and skills and knowledge. I have to tell you that when I first came on board, and the individuals were women who, went to college, stayed home, raised their kids, and came back, and they, graduated from Smith and Vassar, and they were at the lowest level of pay scale. And so I, working with HR and the union at that time, helped the whole section, the PAAs get reclassified to OSCs. But the review that was done, and it's done out of house so that there's no taint of favoritism, I have basically said that that position, as of right now, whenever the last one was done, that they're working within their scope and their pay is within the Washington metropolitan pay range.
Would it be considered, maybe this is a question for Kevin, would it be considered interfering with the merit system if the board were to express its views to the executive just about the question of the every other year? In other words, that our staff obviously has, in that respect, they may have a different situation than other people, and that we would hope that all of their work over the 2-year period would be taken into consideration.
I would really recommend that the board stay out of this. I mean, this is an issue that we've got a merit system, they've got a union contract, they do have a variety of rights, and they're county employees. And if Margaret sends out something saying if you would like to go ahead and have your position reclassified, there's this process, and Margaret is supportive of that because that's what the election director's duties and responsibilities are, is to oversee the staff on a day-to-day basis. I think that's the better path into trying to address the issue.
Mike, do you want to?
Yeah, I completely agree with Kevin in terms of the appropriateness. That said, Mr. Malone and I were just talking, we could ask HR a very generic question: is there a way to consider a situation in which somebody is not doing something all of the time, but that there are circumstances when they will be performing this action? And is there a way to get that in?
That would be great.
Position?
Oh, yeah.
That's a good idea, Mike.
That would be very
Or
helpful.
if the position is by the hour as opposed to.
Either way.
Either way.
Mike, that's a good idea.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you. I'm sorry I
No.
missed the appropriate place.
Conference.
We're on a communications report?
No, finish.
No.
Okay. Communications report was sent out to everybody in advance. In the interest of time, I do have a PowerPoint presentation, but the reality is it's just a bunch of statistics. Doesn't really do anything, and I'd be happy to send that to you all so you
Yes,
have the
please.
information.
And it would be great.
So that
Yeah.
we don't have to go through it
Yes.
now, but it's up to you. I'm more
No,
than
no, no,
You have,
happy
go
what's
to.
your,
ahead
you have a
and send
bottom
it.
line for us?
Bottom line was in here.
The advance packet
I
report.
Yeah,
think given what we were given, we did a great job. We had a total of 6,500 phone calls come in to the Board of Elections during peak election time, and 11 visits on election day for the board members, and 6 with our prior board members and prior staff members. And one of my key things for following up on is to really try to work with the state board and over the whole election day visitor thing, and try to find out what our parameters are. Do we have to say yes to everybody? How can we make this work better? Every year I tweak it a little bit, and it still isn't tweaked quite enough. But there's that fine line for you all where you want to meet with the folks, you want to give them the information and make it a better visit for them. We don't want the election judges to be burdened, but at the same time you want to be able to go out and visit more polling places and be available to Margaret and Kevin if an issue arises. So, there is that balance that I continue trying to strike. And so, again, I will be contacting the state board and just seeing, how they can help us with that.
And if there's anything we can do about the
Yeah.
no-shows, that I was surprised by the number of that.
Yeah.
I mean, once we're going to be there.
Yeah.
It actually went down this last time from
Yeah.
before, so, because the
It
one
happens
that
to
was
me.
a significant no-show, I sent a very firm letter to them.
Good.
And so they were very good about communicating with me in advance of the
Mark, the other
meeting.
question I had is,
Yeah.
with the 311 calls on election day,
Uh-huh.
was that added to the total number?
Yes.
So that's the 100, okay.
Right. And so remember with 311 that those calls are fairly low in number, because when we're at peak time, 311 operators are told to just transfer the calls over to us so that we can handle them quickly and efficiently, because they don't have access to empty voters.
Thank you, Marjorie.
Okay, I'll send out the
it back.
PowerPoint so everybody has it.
Conference.
Mayo conference?
Okay, yes. So, we sent to you in the advance packet the link, I believe, for the agenda. So everybody's kind of had a chance to look at that. Basically, what we have right now is we have, I just need to find out from the board members, we do have reservations for the night of June 7th and June 8th for each of you. I just need to confirm that you are planning to go, and if you're planning to stay both nights, because I do need to make some modifications to that. So
Let's go around the room.
What time on the 7th does it start?
it starts at 10:30 on the 7th.
In the morning?
In the morning.
Why did I ask?
Yeah.
No,
Cocktail
sorry.
hours at 10:30.
Take that off. I'm sorry.
So we have to be we have to be there by
Only you
It says-
go to
it says
events
college
at
students,
10:30
so
at night.
It starts at 10:30.
Yeah.
10:30 a.m. We have to be there on the 7th.
Right, and the conference goes through the 8th. It'll adjourn sometime around 4:30 in the afternoon.
And that's at the Clarion?
And that's at the Clarion.
So the reservations would be on the 6th and 7th, is that right?
The 7th and 8th right now
7 and
is
8.
what
You gotta
we did.
get there
You gotta
on the
get
7th
there
in the morning.
You gotta leave at 7 in the morning to get there at.
Why wouldn't
at
we,
10:30.
I would much rather go the night before and be there the 6th and the 7th. I mean,
We'll see if
Isn't
there's
that-
rooms available. I can't guarantee there's rooms available.
I think that's what we've always done in the past,
Well,
going there.
but it's also on the 8th.
Because on the 8th usually is
Yeah,
a
but-
reception, something.
But you don't have to stay over.
Well,
I
on
think
the 7th
we
you have to
normally
stay.
leave.
No, but the
If
7th.
you could tell us what night you would like to stay, we will try to do our best to accommodate your request.
Because the conference is the 7th and the 8th.
So if you want to
So
spend the
let's
night.
everybody send you an email to
No,
say
No, let's go
what-
around the room.
no. We're
Let's
going to
do
go
it.
around the room now. We're not going down that path.
What path?
So,
What did you
What night? She
I
wanted
said
an
you
email.
send us and we would let you.
Ocean City, right?
So
It's in Ocean City.
it's in Ocean
Yeah.
City. So Jim, right
It's
now,
not required. You're
yeah,
not
yeah,
required
It's not
to-
required.
this is not a required conference.
You know,
So Jim,
I'll be there nights of the 7th and the 8th.
What night
Okay.
for the 7th?
okay.
Wait,
Yeah.
but it
7
ends on the
and-
8th?
It ends on the 8th. There's
But
an
it's an
event in the
reception.
evening on the 8th, and in the past,
State board.
board members have wanted
Yeah,
to stay
yeah.
so that they
Oh,
can
okay.
participate in that.
So I'll be there the night of the 7th and the 8th.
Okay.
Me
You're
too.
staying over.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay.
When's your meeting with the other folks?
I don't know.
Oh.
We'll plug it in.
Mary Ann.
I would do the 6th and the 7th, please.
All right. See what we can, again, I will see what I can do. Okay. Alex.
I would probably say 6th and the 7th for me.
Okay. David.
6 and the 7th.
Graciela.
Same, 6th and the 7th.
Jackie.
6 and 7.
Okay. Kevin.
I don't need a room.
What
Okay.
did you do, Nahid?
All right. Okay.
7 and 8.
Thank you.
7 and 8.
Yeah.
Because it's a reception in the evening, usually.
Okay, just
Something on
just
the
for purposes of clarification, on the
Something on the-
7th, do you want to tell them? The reason we're saying you don't have to be there till 10:30 is because the first hour is mail business.
Yeah.
Right.
Roberto went to the conference planning session this week, and I didn't ask him for a debriefing on exactly what's being covered in that first hour. Officially, the agenda begins, the opening general session is at 9. You know, a lot of that is opening stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not sure at this point if Linda or someone from the state board is speaking during that time frame, but the first official, like, speaker is at 10:30.
You know, but last conference, I got there early with Nahid. We need somebody because they take attendance at.
That's the night before. There's actually a
So-
Mayo board
But wait a
meeting on the
second,
6th.
the last time you went,
It was a
mandatory.
mandatory.
Right.
This is not a mandatory.
Okay, so they won't take
Yeah.
attendance?
Well, they may take attendance, but
I'll be
Allison
there
and
to-
Alberto.
Same
Okay,
with Montgomery
good.
County.
Okay.
Yeah. Even
Allison carrying the flag.
Okay.
Oh, okay, put me down for the 7th then. I'm sorry, I thought it was mandatory.
No, this
And
is
I'm
not
very
mandatory.
anal about being there on time.
Ah,
Okay,
So-
so Gracie,
I will be fine on the 7th.
okay, 7th and 8th or just the 7th?
Well, the conference ends on the 8th, right?
But there's
Right.
a party
The
that night.
last
Party
session,
that
It's a bonfire, okay? It's a bonfire on the beach.
That's the one, yeah.
Early
That's
there.
the one they serve you wine in the plastic cup.
On beach,
That's the
please.
event.
I'll bring my own cup.
I'll bring my own cup.
the last
Sounds
session is
dreadful.
at 5:30. There's a looking ahead to 2018 panel from 4:30
is
to
fun.
5:30, and
Huh?
then 6
It's
to 8
fun.
there's a dinner and
Oh,
awards,
you're
and yes, at 8
crazy.
o'clock
This is in
there's a
the beach.
bonfire and a movie.
On the
I don't
7th.
remember.
There's a movie on the beach?
I don't remember what movie it is.
On the 7th or the 8th?
No, on the
That's
8th.
like
No,
a
on the 8th.
party.
Oh, no.
And do they have seats, or you have to sit on the sand?
No, you take your towel, you sit on the.
Ah.
Is that the end of? Oh, the next meeting is May 15th.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we will be talking about early voting,
Right.
so it's going to be,
And what can we expect? You're going to
putting together a packet, a fairly large packet for you,
of various sites.
of all the sites that we've been able to determine. I don't know if they've finished all of the radio wave and that's a very old-fashioned word.
Connectivity.
Connectivity
Yeah.
testing has been done.
If we have suggestions of sites that may or may not be on your list, you want those?
Oh, yeah, we would like them now.
Okay.
Well, and, okay, I am presuming that there is going to be great attention paid to, help me,
I don't know what you mean, so I can't.
the location, Wheaton,
Yes,
due to the fact that we don't
Right.
have a place.
yes.
Okay. The other thing is, I think we have a whole new issue now if we have these paper ballots
We've taken that into consideration.
in terms of room.
Yes,
Because we did find
planning on the.
in the
So you-
last,
you
we
plan on
haven't really
additional space?
discussed.
Is that-
We're
okay.
planning on, we're planning for additional,
Space needs.
space.
We have exactly
Yes,
so
you
many.
know those great big gray things that we have? We're planning on more space to hold more ballots because of the 65,
Well,
75 ballots.
I think we had issues, I don't know what kind of discussion we had, but issues during last early voting at some of the sites where we had to have more scanners brought in, and it was really a bad tight fit. We had voters roaming around through voting booths and, you know, because of lines to the scanners,
Yeah, that was Jane
etc.
Lawton, I was there. It was very tight.
Was Wheaton.
There might have been others, but that.
Pardon me?
There might have been others, but at Jane Lawton, we were very tight.
Oh, yeah, so was Gaithersburg, where I was. And the fact that we have to have space to have all this paper, and people, to be dealing
And
with it.
security for the paper.
I'm real
Yeah.
concerned.
It sounds like it'll be a very interesting conversation next month.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
No one opposed?
Before we go,
Do we have we don't have
No
an
executive.
executive session?
okay,
No.
but wait,
So let's adjourn.
We're adjourned.
all right.